things about that.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is the Bloomberg Business Flash.
It's 11:21 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. Stocks higher, S&P.
Hello, this is DrPaulCottrell, and we're doing a live stream on YouTube only today. It is February 28th. We're going to go over what's going on in the markets, but also, there's some breaking news. There's supposedly an issue in New York with a window washer that's dangling on the side of the building. So there's some issues going on there. Texas officials are talking about an outbreak of measles. So there's a lot to go over. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and help support my work by donating. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or Buy Me a Coffee. Please donate. In addition, please be a paid member to my Patreon channel. It's through the donations, the people that are paid members on Patreon, and the ones that purchase the products that help me to do these videos for free. I just released a video of the cold season and how it's worse this year than last year. I went into detail with some of the numbers that are coming from the CDC, so please take a look at that. Make sure that's episode 24, I think. And please make sure that you are subscribed to all my channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube: Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. It's important that you subscribe to all those channels. The reason being is that there's censorship on YouTube, even though that's where most of the views are, and so channels get strikes on them because of the certain things that I say. So it's really important that you subscribe to all the channels. All right. If you're looking for older content, take a look at what's on Brighteon or Rumble. But the point here is, make sure you subscribe to all my channels. I have 2 channels on X that you can follow me on, and GETTR, to get updates. And you can listen to my podcasts on Podomatic, Apple Podcast, and on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can also watch live stream on my website. So there's lots of ways to see my content. Ask your social media to follow me, and that way I can create more followers to reach a larger audience, to explain what's going on in the world, my perspective on it, which is unique, and how to improve your health and wellness. So please help me help you. All right. So ask your social media to follow my work, share the links, and make sure you subscribe. With that said, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Again, it's purchasing the products that will help with your health, but also help with me producing these videos. Lavender, and I also have peppermint structural nano silver soaps. Very high quality. These are in the new packaging. Get a couple bars for your household. It's a great product. It's something that I use, and it's a healthier version of some of the soaps that are out there. A lot of these soaps that are out there have a lot of chemicals in it. These don't have that. So go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get these very high quality structural nano silver soaps. You can get it in lavender or peppermint in the new packaging. And in the old packaging, I have charcoal tea tree and lemongrass. So get a couple bars for your household, help my work, and help with your health. Use discount 5 and you can get $5 off. It's all caps, discount 5, and you get $5 off. I have to do a lot today, so I apologize for speaking so quickly here. Also, please go to my store and take the Max 14 or the Max 35. Take a teaspoon a day, swish it in your mouth, gargle about 20 to 30 seconds, and then swallow. And it's going to improve your immune system. It's the first pillar of a 4-pillar protocol. The first pillar is the Max 35 or Max 14 to boost up your immune system. The C60 is to soak up your free radicals. That's the second pillar. The third pillar is to bring down inflammation. That's turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans. And the fourth pillar is to boost up your energy levels and your metabolism with Boomer Boost. Follow that protocol, add to it, tweak it for your needs. It's a great way to get healthy. So please go to my store, get the Max 14 or Max 35, take a teaspoon a day, every day. If you're not feeling well, take a tablespoon or 2 a day, and then go back to your maintenance. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off. Let's go to the what's going on in New York here with this window washer.
Where we were seeing this active scene that you can see on your screen right now behind the first responders, as well as we were getting a glimpse up at the 78th floor of that building where we did see the machinery that the window washers typically stand in to reach those heights. But we are going to just sit on this for a second, as I do want to see if it is going to get underway. Therefore, we won't have to pivot to something else and come back to it. Again, still no update on exactly when this is going to start. This all just came into our newsroom very quickly here, and this media setup was staged pretty promptly in response to all of this. So we're keeping an eye on it. If it does start, we're going to come back to it here on Live Now from Fox. But what we are going to do, since we do want to bring you some other live events in the meantime, as we do keep an eye on this, I do want to head back to this other live event that we were showing you here just a little bit earlier, as a Florida woman is being sentenced for killing her terminally ill husband. Again, this all happening out of Daytona Beach, Florida. And the court documents indicate that the couple had agreed to a murder-suicide plan, but Ellen Gilland, who is the one being sentenced, she did not follow through on taking her own life. Instead, she ended up in a standoff with police before being taken into custody. Let's listen into this a little bit more. I'll pop up some boxes for you so we can just watch and see when these other events do start.
While it was failing, if that makes sense. Okay. It wasn't like that huge time where he was trying to get his work. It wasn't after that point, it was during that time. Okay.
And while you were on scene, Ms. Gillen expressed multiple times that she wanted to take her own life.
All right, let's just, I want to go back to Bloomberg. Talking about Bitcoin.
Between 2,000 and 4,000 forever. It just dropped in near 2,000. So the market's near some good support levels. But the big picture macro for cryptos is just plain bad for prices. And I like to point out there's unlimited supply. So to me, that 10,000 level in Bitcoin looked very similar to the NASDAQ 25 years ago. You remember that one? I mean, I remember it well. For me, it's almost exactly 25 years ago. Just the bell was ringing that, yeah, this is kind of silly, stupid, expensive. And I think that's the problem. We're still silly, stupid, expensive. We're reached good, decent support. But the problem lies, the big picture, I think, is anybody who's bullish cryptos, I like to say, yeah, it's probably okay. It might not go down as long as the stock market keeps going up.
Can you talk about just the construction of Bitcoin and if that implies any sort of vulnerability in Bitcoin?
Well, John, the key thing about Bitcoin is, and it really brought me into the space that got me really bullish, like 8 years ago, is definable diminishing supply, increasing in demand and adoption. Now, when Mr. Trump was first elected in 2016 on CoinMarketCap.com, there's about 600 cryptos. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Now there's 12 million. And before he got elected, there was about 2 million. There's unlimited supply. So we've unleashed the animal spirits in this space. You remember pets.com. I remember trading.
Oh, yeah.
Just kind of having fun. And that's where we are now. So I think that's the thing. The space, I think, had its best bullish inclinations ever last year when Mr. Trump switched from antagonist to zealot. But now it's just to me, it's just way too expensive. And the key thing I like to point out is things like Dogecoin and Shiba Inu are just jokes. Bitcoin has a much higher correlation to them then to the stock market, and they're all positively correlated, which means that's the problem. And I think it's just showing we're taking out some of those excesses of speculation and liquidity in all markets. Remember, stock market is still very expensive.
All right, John, you ready for this? Miami today, mostly sunny, 78 degrees. I mean, if you're into that kind of thing for February, then more power to you. But I mean,
Well, you always get me back in July, and I earn that. You always get me back in that.
exactly. All right, let's switch on the commodity front here, Mike. WTI crude oil sitting here just below 70. I'm calling it out for Alex Steele because she's got this on her speed dial. What's the crude call here these days?
60 next. I think it's breaking down to 60. Yeah, first of all, let's not underestimate our administration. We have an administration that wants lower crude oil prices and lower yields. And guess what's happening? They're both falling. And they have fundamental reasons in their space. So for crude oil, we have an excess supply out of the US, Canada, and OPEC. And just on the terminal later today, decreasing demand from the largest demand source for the last 10 years, and that's China. The space for crude oil is very negative, and we have managed money net position still long. So I think crude oil is just a matter of time. It has to get below that U.S. cost of production, which is around $56, $57 a barrel, according to Bloomberg New Energy Finance, to shut off this excess of supply versus demand, which is the way it always works. So I'm still bearish crude oil. I think copper's even peak. Most commodities looks like they have peaked, and crude oil is just the one that really matters.
Oh, wait, I heard something about levies on Canadian energy products starting with Tuesday.
Yeah, okay, so that the short term might be a bit discombobulating, but the key thing about, let's just think about just a few years ago, the U.S., we have a metric on the Bloomberg terminals called crude oil net imports. Well, now it's negative because the net exports of crude oil liquid fuel from the U.S. is around 4 billion barrels a day. Now, there's certain grades that'll come between U.S. and Canada that will mess things up a little bit, but in the macro, we have an excess supply of liquid fuels, crude oil, natural gas, and most notably grain. So in the macro big picture, as we kick into a bit more of a trade war with tariffs, it's going to pressure those factors unless we can get some countries to say, okay, we'll buy more of your stuff. But in the meantime, we do have excess supply and we have a motivated government and the trend's not friendly. I also look at natural gas. It looks like it just peaked around 4 in the last 10 years. Every time it gets near 4, we find new supply and it drops in there too.
There you go. That's what See, I've been through one season of Landman, so I'm an expert on all things energy, oil and gas.
I didn't get my chicken question and egg prices.
Well, I will save that for next time. We'll do.
Right.
I don't know if he does chickens and eggs and things like that. What came first?
He
Mike
knows
McClellan,
about it.
Senior Commodity Strategies. He probably does. He covers everything. So he came off the farm in the Midwest, so he knows soybeans, he knows corn, he knows all that kind of stuff. And now he's shaped himself into like an expert on crypto. And he's in the self-proclaimed crypto capital of the world, which is Miami.
Which was a very smart move.
That was. It was exactly right. So good stuff there. Looking at the markets here, a little bit of green on the screen here to end up what has been a tumultuous week. We're going to have more coming up. We're checking with Michael McKee. He does all the economic stuff. And I want to ask him about some of this inflation data, some of the other data we saw today. What happened?
All right, what I want to do is I want to go to Fox Business dealing with Border Patrol.
Welcome back. Border crossings are now at a 15-year low, thanks to President Trump's immigration crackdown. But deadly fentanyl is still flowing into America. More than 1,000 pounds of fentanyl was seized across the country last month alone, enough to kill more than 230 million people, the majority of people in America. President Trump says tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China will take effect next week on Tuesday because those countries are not doing enough to stop this crisis. Joining me now is U.S. Customs and Border Protection Senior Advisor Ronald Vitiello. Ronald, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. What is most important that we need to understand about the changing position of the border crossings right now?
Well, good morning, Maria. Thanks for inviting me. Yeah, what people need to know is that the Border Patrol, the front line of DHS, is back in business, largely due to the executive orders coming out of the White House. You know, the American people voted for a secure border and safe streets in America. And the men and women on the front line with the leadership of the Department of Homeland Security and the White House are making that happen. Like you said, we have an almost 100% reduction in the activity of illegal aliens crossing the border on the southwest border right now as we speak, 100% less than last year. that translates into more hours on patrol, more aircraft in the air, more people on the front line screening visitors that are coming into the United States, screening cargo and screening people. And so,
All right, they're doing an update with the window washer dangling at 78th floor.
To block off the street from traffic, any sort of pedestrians. About that time, 23 engine had come from the west. They did the same thing. The officer from 23 engine was making transmissions, confirming what we had. Both chauffeurs did a great job blocking up the street, securing the area. We made our way up to the 78th floor. Just ahead of us, 23 engine had taken another elevator. They brought a life-saving rope. Ladder 4 had brought life-saving ropes and utility ropes to the 78th floor. We also sent our roof firefighter to the roof. Once we got up there, as soon as we opened the apartment, the door to the elevator rather, I could feel like a gust of air. I knew that the window had been taken at that point. I came into the room and they were swinging back and forth, and the scaffolding was twisted. We were able to get eyes on 2 occupants, communicated down to 9th Battalion, let them know that we confirmed that there were actually occupants inside the scaffolding, and they were not secured. They weren't tied off. They had harnesses on, but for some reason they were not secured to any sort of safety lines. Members of 23 engine and 4 truck acted quickly using 23 engine's life-saving rope tied to a substantial object. Then we're able to tie out the left-hand side of the scaffolding. Once that was secured, Rescue 1 had actually just made their way up to the apartment at that point. Had a quick discussion with the officer from Rescue 1, and Rescue 1 members then had all their equipment up there. They acted quickly, tied off a substantial object to the right side of the scaffolding, secured that side, and then they went to work. They immediately had their members secured, tied life safety lines onto the 2 occupants of the scaffolding. And as soon as they were all secured, members of Rescue 1 started going through their evolution and getting them closer, the occupants in the scaffolding closer to the building.
How would you describe the danger that these guys were in?
It was the occupants of the well, actually both. I'll say that it was extremely dangerous obviously for the occupants of the scaffolding, but initially when we got on scene, it was extremely dangerous for members of the FDNY. The sill to the window on these buildings, it was incredibly low. I mean, they have a full picture window. Then all that glass had been taken. There was broken glass everywhere. There was a high wind factor blowing into the building. There's glass pretty much raining all over the sidewalk when we pulled up. But also we had to be careful for our members that we're operating essentially on the ledge of a 78-story building. So it was very difficult for us. But I couldn't believe what I was seeing, the fact that they weren't tied off. So they kept trying to stand up in the scaffolding, and members of all the companies that were here, we told them, kept telling them to sit down. And fortunately, both sides of the scaffolding remained level because they weren't secured to anything. I can't speak to that. I don't know why it was rotating. It was extremely windy. I don't have the physics behind why it was actually spinning, but it was very windy up there. As you know, or you may not know, whatever the wind's like on street level, once you get up to the 78th floor, it's a whole different ball game. I can't speak to that. Yes, there was. There was the occupants of the apartment, and then of course, members of our companies, 23 engine, Rescue 1, and Ladder 4 were kind of securing that area. But the occupants of the building were in there, and of that apartment as well. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Members of Rescue 1 sorry, members to rescue. Well, actually, all the members down here in the Ninth Battalion, they do this stuff and they train for this stuff day in and day out. 23 engine, they're an engine company, but they showed up on the floor of the incident. They had a lifesaver room. Everybody's squared away. Everybody trains here, so they knew exactly what to do. And then once Rescue 1 got up there, they have a different set of skills and training, and they're incredibly adept to dealing with this stuff. So the evolution goes pretty quickly once you get up there and you have the members up there that know what they're doing. So I believe it's 78th floor. Yeah. I don't know.
Great, thank you guys. And that concludes that press conference that we just got.
All right, I'm
Hearing
gonna
from-
pivot back to Fox News.
We're in a situation where the men and women on the front line are allowed to do their jobs in protecting us. And so they're able to do that now better because the activity is way down. Unprecedented support from the Department of State, the Department of Defense, the Department of Justice, Health and Human Services, all working together to make sure that people are still crossing are removed quickly and in agreements with our foreign partners to take their own people back.
Yeah, look, I think that it's good to see a whole of government working together on this, but I've got to say it's really rich to see these celebrities in Hollywood remark about President Trump's policies. The White House is firing back at filmmaker Michael Moore after he criticized the president's illegal migrant deportation policy, and the president's focusing on criminals. But Michael Moore writes a blog post suggesting that deported migrants could have cured cancer or stopped an asteroid that's gonna hit us in 2032. Are we deporting all these people who could be geniuses? The White House calling his comments a strong contender for the dumbest statement of the year, while highlighting President Trump's efforts to expel illegal criminals out of America. Ronald, your reaction?
Well, people on the left, people in Hollywood, some people in Washington, they're out of touch with what America voted for, what people want in the United States, which is a secure border, our national security to be at its utmost, and safe streets in America. And that includes finding people who are in the country illegally and have committed crimes in their own communities. And so that might not affect Michael Moore every single day. It affects hardworking Americans in every city and town in America. And they can be assured that the president is very enthusiastic about securing our borders, ending the scourge of fentanyl, and protecting the streets in America and removing criminals who are also in the country illegally.
Yeah, wow. Texas Congressman Morgan Luttrell, meanwhile, has introduced new legislation that would require DHS to report crimes committed by any migrant let in under the controversial Biden-era CHNV program. Miles, tell us about that.
So under the previous administration, we know that the parole system was abused for a number of countries in the hemisphere, and people were let in on parole, without the kind of vetting that is appropriate. And parole is supposed to be an individualized setting. Not everybody from Cuba deserves to get paroled into the United States. And so that was happening under the last administration. It's now been ended. We've turned off at CBP, we've turned off the CBP-1 app and stopped the abuse of parole, stopped the release of people who come into the country illegally. And so the congressman here is looking to backstop what the front line can do, and make sure that we're reporting. We're letting Americans know what the risks were in the last administration with a chaotic border and out of control. That's ended. The nonsense is ended. Now it's time to backstop what we're doing with resources and laws like this that help continue to protect America.
Ronald, I wonder what you think about President Trump's idea. He floated this idea this week of a Visa Gold Card for wealthy legal immigrants. He said the program would offer a path to citizenship for high net worth individuals who are willing to invest $5 million in the country. What do you think of that idea?
Well, I think it's a privilege to immigrate into the United States. Many of us in America have an immigration story in our background. And so allowing the business community to import people into the benefit of the United States, right? Our immigration system is supposed to serve Americans. And so this hits right at the bullseye of common sense in our country. We have people who have skills, knowledge, capability, and resources that want to come and live the American dream with a green card or a gold card in this case. Why shouldn't we do that? It hits right down the pipe at common sense.
Yeah, I just wonder if the drug cartels are going to figure out a way to abuse that program too.
Well, we have to be vigilant. That's why vetting is important. Vetting for everyone that comes, right? If you want to use that privilege, you got to prove to Americans that you're going to be a safe actor in the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, these are the basics, vetting. I mean, vetting people coming in, and yet Joe Biden didn't think of it? Unbelievable. Ronald Vitiello, good to see you, sir. Thank you.
Company's workflow could be as smooth as this. With Zoho, the smoothest, easiest, coolest CRM around. Oh, you think CRMs can't be cool? Cue the dashboard. Zoho unifies your company's entire workflow and boosts productivity by letting you automate processes, campaigns, and more. No matter if you're a complete novice or sales juggernaut. With Zoho, every department of your company can work in harmony. Now that's smooth. And when the team is in sync, you can ride that rhythm all the way to the top. Over 100 million users worldwide trust Zoho to help them smooth things out. If you want to get jazzed in your CRM, sign up for Zoho CRM and make work smooth with Zoho.
Financial. That feeling you get when you're on budget and on cloud nine. Let Financial become your everyday state of mind. Tap to start your journey to a more chill financial reality. These are Ed Words of Wisdom by Edward Jones. This is breaking news from Bloomberg.
We've got about 10 data points to get to in this hour as they start to come in. Where we want to start to first, we'll go to the PCE price index. This is year over year. So for January, the expectation was for 2.5, came in right on target at 2.5. We go to core PCE price index year over year for January was 2.6%. Came in right on target at 2.6%. I want to take you over to personal income for January. The survey expectation was for 0.4%, came in to take higher, 0.9%. Personal spending for January. The survey was for 0.2%, came in down, off 0.2%. So that's a difference there. Want to see the markets and the reaction. Not much. We still have NASDAQ futures still teetering right now, up about 0.1%, 22 points. We have S&P futures up about 0.3%, 17 points. Dow futures up about 0.5%. We go over to the yield space. The 2-year yield 4.48%. That's little change, and the yield on the 10-year 4.25%, and that is little change. Tom.
Lisa, thanks so much. Turn to the market. All the inflation numbers pretty much on the survey, but I really want to focus on real personal spending decline way off survey.
All right, this is Fox Business dealing with Nvidia.
Breaking news, OpenAI just hitting the tape with this announcement. The launch of its newest and largest AI model, GPT 4.5. So it promises a significant update to the large language model underlying ChatGPT. So here's what we know. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman just posted on X, quote, "It's a different kind of intelligence, and there's a magic to it I have not felt before. Nvidia makes the chips powering the magic of artificial intelligence." What's ahead? On the heels of quarterly earnings, let's bring in Nvidia founder and CEO Jensen Huang. I mean, let's say by nearly every measure, it was a record-breaking quarter. During the conference call, though, and this really caught my ear, you rattled off a list of all the tech giants, automakers, healthcare. I mean, the Mayo Clinic, you said, is using AI to pioneer drug discovery. They're all incorporating it. But I gotta ask you, do you see a sector that's slow to embrace artificial intelligence and should be way more aggressive in adopting AI right
Well, that's a good question. Everybody is racing to adopt the AI. I would say it this way. I would say that number one, the core technology builders, the model builders, and the companies that are building consumer-oriented AIs, search, recommender systems, music recommendation, video recommendation, all of those product recommendation, all of those types of consumer AI adoption is incredibly fast. The frontier models and all of the startups trying to build a next generation of frontier models, they're racing to get to the next level. Then there's the areas that are developing. We call them agentic AI, almost like a digital workforce. And they're digital marketing people or software engineers that will be agentic. And so that area is developing very nicely, and that's likely to come on next. The next phase after that is what we call physical AI. This is AI that understands the laws of the world, the physical world. It understands things like inertia and gravity and cause and effect and object permanence. And we'll use that for self-driving cars and robotic systems and so on, things of that nature. And so each one of these industries are kind of coming on in waves, and they're all building on top of each other.
Can it help chickens speed up egg production? I mean, we need more eggs at this moment. I mean, as we look at the demand, it's clearly sizzling. But there were reports, at least one hyperscaler, that would be Microsoft, was canceling some data center leases. Are you saying you're seeing no trimming or even scaling back planned data center build out right now?
Yeah, what we see is, if you look at this year's data center CapEx, and you compare it to last year, it's a big, huge growth. And the vast majority of that data center CapEx used to be allocated to general purpose computing, traditional data centers. Mm-hmm. But now going forward, it's going to be used for NVIDIA's accelerated computing and AI type systems. And so not only is the CapEx larger, the amount of that CapEx dedicated to AI is going to be far greater. And so we're seeing a very robust growth for this year compared to last year. And I think we're teed up for some pretty great build outs of these data centers to produce essentially what I call AI factories, which in the future will transform energy, if you will, into digital intelligence. And these digital intelligence, we call them tokens, but basically artificial intelligence. Yeah, we've got many years of build out to go.
Many years of build out. I mean, it looks like it's a very long runway. I got to ask you about the new chatbot on the block. There are reports that China's DeepSeek is pushing up the launch of R2, its successor to January's really popular R1 chatbot, from May to basically as soon as possible. Do you know if the upcoming DeepSeek model uses Nvidia chips, which ones, and how concerned are you that cheaper ways to train models might mean fewer sales of your pricier Blackwell chip, which is obviously very popular right now?
DeepSeek is fantastic. And in fact, what DeepSeek has done is it open sourced a new type of state-of-the-art AI model called reasoning models. Reasoning models are basically models that think. Instead of you asking the chatbot a question, and it instantly spews out an answer, and it does a really good job doing it. But now the chatbot will break the question down step by step, reason about it. It might produce several different versions of it internally in its head, choose the best answer before it presents it to you. And so it turns out that these reasoning AI models has discovered a new scaling law, and a scaling law says the more compute you apply to thinking, the smarter the answer. And so it's exactly the opposite. What DeepSeek has done is actually opened up a whole new field that consumes an enormous amount of NVIDIA's computing capability. Just about every AI developer has now incorporated either R1 or technologies like R1, chain of thought and reinforcement learning and search and so on, to improve the quality of their answers. And so what really happened is that this new generation of AI models has caused demand to be really high. The papers of DeepSeek does a really good job describing the hardware that they used, and they used several generations of our older hardware, and they also used the hardware that is export controlled. The innovation of that team is really terrific. You have to give them credit. They found a way to develop algorithms and software that takes advantage of the computer. But in the end, that's really what computers engineers do. They're really smart about whatever computer you give it. It's a smartphone or a PC or an Nvidia GPU or a game console or whatever it is that you give them. They're going to find a way to develop great software for it. So they're really good software engineers. The big idea is DeepSeek has opened up reasoning AI.
But did they use any of the pricier chips? Well, I guess they weren't really shipped at that moment, but the Trump administration is working right now. It really wants to further blunt China's technological advancements by, in essence, curbing US-made semiconductor sales, specifically yours. I know you met with President Trump last month. I'm not going to ask you what was said in your private conversation, but did you leave the White House after meeting with him feeling better about NVIDIA's global business, more concerned?
I left the White House with great new relationships, a very clear understanding that the administration is going to work with us to understand the market, to understand ground truth and what is actually happening. Of course, we're committed and very enthusiastic to work with the administration to achieve its goals and want the administration to succeed. The net of it all is if you look at where NVIDIA's computers are that are going to China today, and you compare it against what we just launched this quarter, this record-breaking quarter that we had with Grace Blackwell, the comparison of the technology anywhere from 20 to 60 times higher performance is what we currently have in the United States. And so every day that goes by, the export-controlled technology is further and further behind, if you will. In a lot of ways, it's another way of saying every day that goes by, we're making that technology slower and slower. And so I think the conversation is good, and we're happy to share with the administration everything that we know so that it can make the best decision.
Oh, I want to talk about what you said on the call as long thinking, where AI models incorporate advanced algorithms that enable it to plan, to reason, and adapt over longer timeframes. You said that it requires something like 100 times more compute. I got to ask you, how is the development of this so-called long thinking going to impact people's everyday lives in the near term?
Every time you use ChatGPT, it already does reasoning, and you could see that the quality of the answers has improved tremendously. And so reasoning or long thinking allows it to break the problem down step by step. It process the problem. It might even come up with several examples or several answers internally in its mind. It'll select the best one before it presents it to you. And so the net answer is you're going to get AI that's smarter, present to you better answers, and it'll be a lot more useful.
Amazing. I know a lot of people watching are using it, or they're kind of AI curious. They're dipping into it, and it's just advancing at the speed of thought. I know you've gotten where you are today by anticipating the best and worst case scenarios. Do you envision a day when AI could be powered by something other than semiconductor chips?
Well, wherever semiconductor takes us in the coming decades, there will be computers that has to be built. And whatever new technology comes along, I'm fairly certain we're either inventing it or using it to invent the future. So we're fairly clever about computers here, Liz, as you know, and we love our work here. And so whatever that future is, we're going to go help create it. The thing that's really cool about the latest developments of AI is it's opening up all kinds of new use cases. You know, digital AI research assistant in drug discovery, an AI scientist in helping us discover a new material for energy production. You know, maybe it's a new AI that's used to help us with manufacturing because we don't have enough workforce, and the workforce labor is the people in the workforce is reducing, and so all these different reasons, AI is going to help us be a lot more productive and create some pretty exciting things in the future.
Brave new world. Jensen, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
It's great to see you, Liz.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great drops and lozenges that I have. I have it in honey and lemon, in blueberry, and also in cherry. You can get 100 drops in each bag. Get a few bags for your household and for work. Mitigate that irritant right away during the cold season, the allergy season. It's really important to catch that irritation right away so it doesn't become problematic. I also have lozenges, which are larger than the drops, in elderberry and zinc and in manuka honey, in a 21 count for each bag. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the lozenges and the drops, use discount 5 and get $5 off. Also, structural nano silver toothpaste whitens your teeth, freshens your breath, helps with the gum line, reduces inflammation, reduces plaque buildup, and with good oral hygiene, you're going to help with your cardiovascular health and reduce valvular disease. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver soap. Help with your cardiovascular health, as we've been saying here. Omega-3, bring down LDL levels, increase your HDL levels, help with the systemic inflammation, bring that down, and reduce the stickiness of your red blood cells. Take omega-3 every day to improve your cardiovascular health. And lastly, we have great deodorants on the store. You can get it in citrus, in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. It's aluminum free, baking soda free. It's made from essential oils from the Himalayas. It's a dual purpose product, and it's for males and females. The dual purpose is that it'll help to detoxify your body, and you can use it as a deodorant. So get a couple bars for your household, help support Rainbow Herbals in my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get a couple bars, use discount 5, get $5 off any order. Okay, let's go back to Bloomberg here.
And drugs. Vallejo Mayor Andrea Soar says she could hardly believe that a business believed to be a safe place for children was raided by federal agents.
One of the locations where they found 11,000 suspected fentanyl pills and $100,000 in drug cash was actually at a daycare location.
Just 2 milligrams of fentanyl can be deadly in an adult. A mother and son were arrested at the daycare, in addition to 8 other individuals, as part of a federal crackdown on drug and gun trafficking by criminal gangs. Matt Bigler for CBS News, Vallejo, California.
Boris Spassky, the Soviet chess champ who lost the world title to Bobby Fischer in a Cold War showdown in 1972, has died at 88. The stoic Spassky was a sharp contrast to the fidgety, bombastic Fischer. Steve Kathan, CBS News.
From the world of politics to the world of business, this is Balance of Power. Live from Washington, D.C.
President Zelensky gets an audience at the White House. Welcome to the fastest show in politics as the 2 leaders meet right now in the Oval Office ahead of a joint news conference that we will bring you live from the East Room a bit later on today. We're going to go to the White House in a moment for an update with insights today from Tyler Kendall on the North Lawn. And with me here at the table, a conversation with Bloomberg's Gregory Cordy. We'll look ahead to what form of peacekeeping force could take in Ukraine, assuming they can reach a deal. Rebecca Grant from the Lexington Institute will be here, along with our signature panel, Bloomberg Politics contributors. Rick Davis, Gina Shanzano are with us for the hour. So let's get rolling right now. We're going to be hearing from President Trump and Zelensky when they wrap up their conversation in the Oval. Right now it's Wall Street. It's Charlie Pellet at World Headquarters in New York. PCE Day, Charlie. How's it look?
Indeed. Right now we have got stocks higher across the board, Joe Matthew, with the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ wrapping up a turbulent week with gains right to the numbers because we got the S&P now at 5880, still below 5,900, still below 6,000, up 18, a gain of 0.3%. Dow Industrials up 177 now, up 0.4%. NASDAQ higher by 65 for the NASDAQ Composite Index. That is a gain right now of just about 0.4%. And should point out that year to date, you have the S&P 500 index showing a loss fractionally down 0.03% in the YTD column. 10-year yield 4.23% with the 2-year 4.00%. Spot gold down $28 the ounce, 28.48. That is a drop now of 1%. West Texas Intermediate crude down 0.9%, 69.71 a barrel. And Bitcoin now at 84,037. Bitcoin down today by 0.3%. Peter Cheers, head of macro strategy at Academy Securities, and this morning on Bloomberg Intelligence, he told us he does see a bumpy patch ahead for the U.S. economy.
When you look at what Doge is trying to do, it's going to cut some spending. That's going to hit immediately. Whether some of it was inefficient, fine, maybe that doesn't have an impact. But to the extent they took anything that was efficiently being allocated, that hits. And then the jobs, even if people get laid off, are able to find jobs, which I'm questioning because I don't think the market's that great for jobs.
Peter Cheer of Academy Securities. BlackRock is scrapping its, quote, aspirational workforce representation objectives, reversing course on earlier goals after President Trump moved to end diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI practices. BlackRock shares are up today by 0.6%. Again, recapping, stocks higher, S&P up 0.4%. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now, wherever you get your podcasts. And back we go to Washington as Balance of Power continues. Once again, your host here is Joe Matthew.
On the last trading day of the month, Charlie Pellet, thank you so much and happy Friday, Charlie. Thanks for meeting us here at the threshold of the weekend. I'm Joe Matthew in Washington here on Bloomberg Radio, on the satellite radio, channel 121. And on YouTube, where you can find us now. We're going to be showing you some cool stuff coming up as we bring you live to the White House. Be a good time to get on YouTube. Search Bloomberg Business News Live. You'll see Tyler Kendall on the North Lawn. We do this for you every day, live from Washington on the fastest show in politics. You can hear the program so many different ways, including our podcast that we always point you to on Apple, Spotify, wherever you do your podcasts. Find us on Balance of Power. So here's the TikTok on this Friday. It's beautiful out, by the way. Nice day in the nation's capital. You didn't see anybody shivering when President Zelensky arrived at the West Wing a short time ago. No coat for the boss today. They're in the Oval as we speak, all right? When they're done, and if you're with us on YouTube, you are seeing President Zelensky arrive at the White House. Quick hop over from the Hay Adams Hotel where he spent the night. This bilateral meeting in the Oval Office, and I have to admit, I'm looking at what we're hearing from reporters. You're probably seeing headlines of the terminal. I'm not sure this is going really well. We won't really know until we can hear these two and see the body language. But they're going to have a lunch in the cabinet room after this meeting and then a news conference in the East Room. We'll bring that to you live. There's a full trappings of the visit here coming to fruition in a joint news conference. Now, as we wait for this conversation in the Oval, we can bring it to you on the air. We want to go to the North Lawn of the White House right now, where we find Tyler Kendall. This is something else, Tyler. I'm looking at the headlines. I don't get a sense that President Zelensky is terribly satisfied. What are you seeing?
Yeah, well, Joe, particularly since President Trump has said that they will sign that critical minerals deal later today. And he said that that is considered to be a big commitment from the U.S. But we've heard White House officials say that this is an implicit security guarantee, since the U.S. would have a vested economic interest in the country. But Zelensky said notably that he is looking for what else the U.S. will be bringing when it comes to guarantees. He knows what the Europeans are doing, but that a piece of paper, in his words, are not enough, and that he wants some of these firmer guarantees to come out of it. President Trump saying that they have already started the, quote, confines of a deal when it comes to negotiating with Russia, and also importantly, was asked which side of this he is on, and he said he is for both Russia and Ukraine. He just wants to find peace for the countries. Of course, that goes against some rhetoric that our European allies have been saying when it comes to holding Russia accountable. And that could also be a potential point of contention in the Oval Office today, considering that Zelensky would like to see some firmer security guarantees from the U.S.
I don't know how you can even hear as you're speaking, Tyler. If you're with us on the radio, you can hear it. It's an incredibly busy day on the North Lawn. If we pulled the camera out, you'd see people on each side of Tyler because we've got international press on the ground for this visit. It's a much more crowded campus than usual, Tyler, and I suspect a pretty tough East room to get into later on. I know the clock seems to be broken here because they're running a bit late, but what are we going to expect in this news conference?
Right, well, those big questions about what sort of guarantees the U.S. could give. It appeared that President Trump floated that perhaps more arms could be going towards Ukraine's way. That is something that we know that Ukraine would want, but also our European allies. President Trump did make mention that he knows how critical air defense systems are going to be for the future of Ukraine. That is something that France and also the UK asked President Trump about when they were here at the White House, as they have floated this framework to get UK and French peacekeepers on the ground, but they want to see the U.S. underwrite that deal in some sort of way, including potentially providing those air defense systems. President Trump so far has sidestepped questions about directly what the U.S. would be willing to give up, much to the disappointment of the Ukrainians so far. But our Bloomberg reporting indicating that this critical minerals deal is just really the first step, and that they are hoping to get a little bit more firmer guarantees moving forward.
All right, Tyler, great work. Thank you so much. She managed to quiet them all down. You see how Tyler does that? It's amazing. The glamour of the North Lawn, everybody. Inside that building right now is President Zelensky. Donald Trump is a pack of reporters in the Oval with them. As I mentioned, when that conversation ends, we'll actually be able to bring it to you here on Bloomberg as we add the voice of Gregory Cordy of Bloomberg Politics, knee-deep in the Doge, and of course, no stranger to days like these at the White House. It's great to see. It's been too long. The body language in this East Room news conference is going to be interesting later on here. Are these two guys who like each other or not?
Vladimir Zelensky is kind of a likable guy to a lot of Western leaders, but certainly has had his ups and downs with Trump. When Trump is the kind of guy who, when he meets a world leader, he can be cordial, can be hospitable, and he's certainly hosting Zelensky at the White House today, but he has made some statements in recent weeks that have called into question the very foundations of the U.S.-Ukraine relationship over the past decade. Some very fundamental assumptions, including who started this war anyway. That really is kind of, I'm sure, upset the apple cart. Zelensky's been working very hard over the past few weeks, and even during this transition, to make sure that there's some continuity of U.S. policy here, and it must feel like he's starting from ground zero.
I get that. I'm looking at the headlines here in the Oval. As I mentioned, I don't know how well this meeting is going. I'm just looking at the words. I can't hear the voices or see the posture. Donald Trump says he's for both Ukraine and Russia. He's in the middle of Russia, Ukraine. I'm for both is going to be the headline you're going to see on a lot of newspapers tomorrow morning, right? Says he has started the confines of a deal with Russia. Once the deal is done, it's over, he says. Russia will not want to return. Zelensky, on the other hand, is signing this minerals deal. He says it's not enough. It's a good start, but not enough. Reiterating, Ukraine has a big need for air defense. Is he going to leave Washington disappointed?
I don't know. Just from the headlines you're reading,
that's all we have to go on.
It sounds like a take it or leave it deal for Zelensky. That this is a deal that the President of the United States is going to negotiate directly with the President of Russia, and that Ukraine, despite obviously having the most vested interest in the outcome of this deal, is going to be left on the sidelines. Zelensky's going to have to try to claw back to get a seat at the table.
I mentioned the fact that you're knee deep in Doge. I don't know how you cover Doge. I try to just keep up with it while I'm on the air here. The headlines are just fast and furious, and frequently they contradict each other. You're also now a court reporter full-time because that's where a lot of these stories go. A federal judge ordered the administration to retract directives prompting the firing of thousands of federal workers. The emails they went out, they say, were illegal. The Trump administration says another email is going out on Saturday. Where does this whole thing stand right now?
Well, there's a lot of directives here. There's a lot of things going on all at once, and this is part of the. If we can just take a step back for a second, this is part of the grand strategy. Everything, everywhere, all at once. Coming out of the gate, we're only a month into this new Trump administration.
Yeah.
And it's really a war they're fighting against their own federal bureaucracy on multiple fronts. There's the personnel front, trying to reduce the size of the federal workforce. There's regulations. There's getting rid of contractors, downsizing. A big story on the Bloomberg this morning about the downsizing of the real estate footprint and what that's doing to the commercial real estate market across the country.
Canceling all the leases.
All of this is happening, but the single thing that you alluded to that seems to be getting the most attention is this email that went out last Saturday from the Office of Personnel Management to 2.4 million civilian federal workers saying, please respond with 5 bullet points of what you did last week. And that is what every federal worker in this town is talking about. Conflicting advice from OPM, from the White House, from each of the cabinet secretaries of who has to respond, whether they even have to respond. And now we're told to expect a second email coming this weekend, and Musk says, this time I mean it, if you don't respond, you will be fired.
Judge says it's illegal. We're going to do it again.
We're going to do it all again. It really, the federal bureaucracy is no stranger to the micromanaging data call. That's what the federal government does best. And so there are some federal workers who are just sort of taking this all in stride. They've seen it before. There is an attitude that we've outlasted political, leadership from both parties over the years and the decades. But this feels different. This feels oppressive to a lot of federal workers.
Yeah.
It's almost intended to reduce morale.
To your point, this is the strategy, right? We'll have more on the purge after the weekend, and we'll see what happens with this email. Gregory Cordy, great to see you. We always miss you on Balance of Power when you're not with us. We'll turn back to this deal in Ukraine coming up next on the fastest show in politics. This is Bloomberg.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Myotrol. Myotrol helps to build muscle and maintain muscle, and also improve the mitochondrial health. It's really important to take. It helps with the gene expression to help with building muscle. Do some resistance training. Take Myotrol. If you're an athlete, you'll get larger gains. But even if you're older and you're not an athlete, taking Myotrol is really important to maintain and build muscle. And remember, do some resistance training. It's really important for your health. Please go to my store and get the Goodnight formula. This has tryptophan and melatonin, GABA, and passion flower, some other ingredients in here. Take a look at the label on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The Goodnight formula is going to allow you to get into deep sleep and REM sleep. You need approximately 3 cycles of REM sleep a night to detoxify your central nervous system, to be well rested, and to consolidate memory. Please take the Goodnight formula every day. A good night's sleep is part of a holistic approach to improving your immune system and to slow down the aging process, as well as just overall health. Vitamin B complex, extremely important to take after once you hit about 40 years old. So if you're 40 or older, you should be taking B complex. This will help to protect your neurons. It will also help to boost up your energy levels and to improve your cellular metabolism. Please go to my store and get the vitamin B complex. Take it every day if you're 40 years of age or older. NAC is a really important supplement to take. I started adding it to my stack. Why? To boost up my glutathione levels. It also helps to detoxify your liver and your kidney. It helps to calm down the central nervous system, reduce anxiety, and NAC also helps with lung health. So a lot of people have problems with their lung. Take NAC to help mitigate that issue. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the NAC. Resveratrol, important to take. It stacks well with C60. It also stacks with NAD+, and ubiquinol. Resveratrol will help to get rid of cells that stop dividing and help with the mitochondrial health to boost up energy levels, slow down the aging process, and you're going to have more energy, and you're just replenishing your tissues in areas where you can replenish. Not all tissues can replenish, but with areas that have adult stem cells, you can replenish. So it's important, resveratrol, to take. It works the best when you stack it with like C60, NAD+, or ubiquinol. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
February's economic numbers this morning reinforce bets that the Fed will cut rates at least twice this year. The S&P up 32 at 58.93. That is a gain of 0.5%. The Dow right now up 249, up 0.6%. Nasdaq up 117, also up by 0.6%. The 10-year currently at 4.23%, with a 2-year yielding 4.00%. Spot gold down $30 the ounce, 28.47. Down 1%. West Texas Intermediate crude 69.89 a barrel, down 0.6%. And Bitcoin just about flat on the day at 84,237. Some of the other stories that we're following: earnings news. Dell after earnings down 4.8%. Autodesk after earnings now down by 3.3%. And HP Inc. after earnings down 7.2%. Recapping stocks higher as we wrap up February. S&P up 0.5%. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News now, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Balance of Power continues now. Back we go to Washington. Once again, your host. Here's Joe Mackey.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. We'll get back to Charlie Pellet, the latest on Wall Street on this PCE day a bit later this hour. We do have news from Washington. This is not going well. If you were with us at the top of the hour, you heard me make reference to headlines coming out of the Oval, where President Zelensky is meeting right now with President Trump. This has now devolved into an argument. We're hearing from our reporters who are in the room, and we cannot give you a live view here until the conversation ends because of the nature of the way things go at the White House. Voices are now raised, and an argument has broken out in front of the press corps between President Trump, President Zelensky, and apparently Vice President J.D. Vance, with Donald Trump telling President Zelensky, "You don't have the cards right now." This is a direct quote. This is also coming through a translator that we'll be able to bring you in real time once this is playing back. But this does appear to be going off the rails a bit. I'm going to remind you, not only do these two have a private meeting in the Oval, once reporters are excused from the room, they have a working lunch in the cabinet room. And then they're going to have a joint news conference, at least that's the plan, before scores of reporters, domestic and foreign correspondents in the East Room. Podium set up just like we saw with Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron. Anything could change in this TikTok here. That's all we know. And Donald Trump is scheduled to get out of town around 5 o'clock to get out of Florida. So this is where we are. This could be a very important moment that we're witnessing right now in Washington. I just can't stress enough. What we're seeing, at least in text form out of the Oval Office right now, is painting a pretty ugly picture about where this is going. Remembering, they were supposed to be signing a minerals deal together that was going to, then of course, unlock talks for a peace deal. Stay with us here on Bloomberg. You will hear this conversation as soon as we can bring it to you from the Oval Office. I want to bring in Dr. Rebecca Grant, which is always a good thing when we have a chance to talk to the doctor, Vice President of the Defense Programs at the Lexington Institute. Dr. Grant, I want to ask you about what's going on in there right now, because we're not obviously there to have a sense of this conversation, the tone and the body language, but I do want to ask you a couple of things about what we're hearing and some of the requests that are coming from Ukraine. And number one, and we heard it from Keir Starmer yesterday, peacekeeping forces, a military backstop, if you will, security guarantees for peacekeeping forces from Europe. Donald Trump says, not going to happen. We'll have Americans working there on a minerals deal, and that will be the backstop. to the extent that you understand force protection and the risks that would come with a European peacekeeping force in Ukraine, does that sound like a workable plan?
Well, first of all, so many pieces of this plan have to come together, but let me point out something really important. Peacekeeping means a lot more than boots on the ground. Zelensky has never asked for American boots on the ground. I don't expect to see that. But modern day peacekeeping includes air surveillance. Let me tell you, there is a wall of NATO air power over there. It includes space surveillance. It includes cyber. There is a lot that can be done to watch Russia if we get a ceasefire and to protect Americans that are there and work at a mineral deal or European forces that are there in peacekeeping and to protect Ukraine. So there are a lot of good options here for security. Yes, the U.S. is still going to be in a leadership role.
That's really helpful. If you can describe the situation on the ground now, we've been talking about this static line that's been drawn in the Donbass, World War I style atrophy, a war of attrition. They're bogged down in trenches. But I'm seeing reporting now that the F-16s that were considered to be ineffective, and you and I talked about the F-16s when that request first came and when they were first delivered, that Ukraine is using them in a more aggressive way, not just to knock down missiles and drones, but to actually attack Russian forces on the front lines. Is it making a difference?
Well, the F-16s are well suited for that air-to-ground attack. You know, the fact is we have a lot of different situations in Ukraine right now. There are trenches, as you mentioned. There are also Ukrainian forces inside Russia. And we are seeing a scramble on the ground between Russia that's trying to press to take some additional land and Ukraine that's trying to block that. Over top of all this, the heavy air defense protection over Ukraine. Russia flew 4 strategic bombers in that area and launched missiles earlier this week. So there is still a pretty intensive cat and mouse game going on in the air. But of course, what everybody wants to see is where do these lines fall in the end? And, you know, right now, Ukraine has to be very, very strong. If Ukraine looks weak, there's no negotiating with Putin. So Ukraine really has to keep up that fighting strength and fighting spirit as these talks begin.
Well, that's something. Does that require additional military support, whether that comes in the form of intelligence or actual hardware from the U.S. to continue that fight?
I think continuing military support and whatever intelligence assistance NATO has been providing all along. You know, the fact is that the war, it should have gone many different ways. We should have been stronger at the beginning. The way the battle looks now that Trump has inherited is not how anybody, including Zelensky, wants it to be. There aren't a lot of good options. You know, so Trump, big picture, is trying to see if Russia is willing to talk. The jury's still out on that. He does not have Putin on board. And then trying to strengthen the ties with Ukraine, now turning it towards an economic deal. And hey, I'm not surprised. Trump has said a lot. Zelensky has been a wartime leader for 3 years plus. And, you know, tensions are pretty high. I think Marco Rubio put it really well when he said a lot of things have been said, but we really got to see where the talks with Putin go.
Doctor, I'm looking at these headlines across the terminal. I can't believe what I'm reading coming out of the Oval here. Trump, Zelensky, Vance argue in the Oval Office. That's a headline. Trump to Zelensky, you either make a deal or we are out. If this mineral deal is not signed today, is the rest of the thing off?
No, and look, I'm not to minimize, but look at those 3 personalities, right? And Zelensky is very passionate. He has no choice but to appear to be a strong wartime leader. We know about Trump's frustrations. He hates this war. And we know J.D. Vance is a smart operator as well. So, you know what? I'm not actually so surprised that these 3 are going at it. And I would not for a second think that this means that the U.S. is not interested in European security. And I think that they will get this deal. I mean, there's been a lot of emotion and negotiation. We're seeing it in public. That's pretty unusual. But hey, this is Trump 2.0.
It's almost like you've seen this movie before. What do you think of I'm for both? Donald Trump was asked, he says, I'm in the middle of Russia and Ukraine. I'm for both. He wants to be a mediator here, it seems, which is a striking difference than what we saw in the Biden administration when the president would not talk to Vladimir Putin, called him a dictator, and of course, opened his arms to President Zelensky. What do you make of that change?
Well, we know Trump is serious about trying to bring this war to an end, but I'm telling you, if it gets too tough with Putin, he'll change position. I predicted these will be wild and woolly negotiations, and I do think long-term Trump wants to put a wedge between Russia and China, if at all possible. So this is very, very difficult. It sounds like a very difficult meeting going on, but I think Trump's plan to move this towards an economic link on this mineral deal is key, and I think we will see that deal get signed. Zelensky proposed it in the first place, don't forget.
Yeah, absolutely right. Rebecca Grant reminding us that she can dance on just about anything in the world of breaking news here. You know, we talked about the F-16s. We talked about the Abrams tanks at one point as well, that was a silly request and a foolish thing to provide because they couldn't maintain them. The training would take too long, and that's not exactly the kind of tool that they needed. Many said we should have been giving them more Patriots, more ATACMS, longer range missiles earlier. Doctor, would that have made a difference?
Yes, I think it would have, because by the time Russia dug in late 2022, that made any counterattack much, much harder. There's no question that we made a mistake in trickling aid to Ukraine, and that's part of the frustration that you're seeing today. The systems we've given them have performed very well, Patriot, Abrams as well. It's a very difficult front, and what we've seen is some great use. Now, what we have to remember is our European allies are going to be afraid of Russia, rightly so, for a generation. And we need strong security from Helsinki to Istanbul and protection for Ukraine, because we must contain Russia.
How do you reconcile that with the conversation that the Doge is having, for instance, of slashing defense spending, about finding a more efficient way, about not building the old weapon systems, maybe turning away from aircraft carriers and F-35s? You've seen defense stocks go through extreme volatility in the throes of this conversation. But then we'll hear about, no, don't worry, it'll be the first $1 trillion defense budget of all time. What do you expect in terms of Pentagon spending? Because now we're talking about potentially, if you want to wonk out with me for a minute, Doctor, a continuing resolution for the rest of the year, which is going to raise a lot of eyebrows at the Pentagon.
CRs are bad, but remember, it's Congress that spends the money. Yes, we need aircraft carriers because they can penetrate into the combat zone and deliver a lot of combat power. My take on the Doge at the Pentagon is they want innovation. So yes, they're going to look at everything. They're going to try to get an audit, and they want to see those innovative programs, whether those are in space, whether that's new aircraft, drones, and try to prioritize those. And I think that's a good theme. It's going to turn out we need a lot of what we're already building, including F-35s, because we're in a hot world fight, in a lot of zones, right? We've got a lot of forces still in the Middle East. But I think that what the Doge is trying to do is to prioritize innovation at the Pentagon. And you see that with the choices of Feinberg and Phelan and others to hold key roles there.
Well, we like the idea of innovation. Obviously, is there that much fraud, waste, and abuse at the Pentagon, though, to make a difference of the size of cuts that they're talking about?
I think that's really hard to say. But remember, most administrations come in with a big agenda. What's unusual is seeing, an 8% number on it. But when you really look at what is absolutely essential, I'd be surprised. I don't think that there's enough fraud, waste, and abuse. But we don't know. The Pentagon hasn't passed a clean audit. I'm sure they want to look around at that. But bottom line, we have heavy national security requirements. We're going to need to spend more on the U.S. Iron Dome or Eagle Dome, whatever we're going to call it. And so there are going to be some spending priorities. But right now, Doge is taking a pass at stressing innovation to see if they can wring some money out of that Pentagon budget.
Wow. Are you referring to, by the way, they're just getting ready to let us show you what took place in the Oval here as we wait to hear from Presidents Trump and Zelensky. Iron Dome for the U.S., is that what you're referring to? Donald Trump suggested he wanted that. And a lot of folks threw their hands up in the air. So how would you even make that happen? Where would we position all the missiles? How much would it cost?
Well, we're going to find out because he gave Secretary of Defense Hegseth a 60-day task where they're about 30 days into that to try to study what an Iron Dome style system would look like. It's going to be different since our threats come across the ocean. It won't be a short-range system, but there's plenty we can do to improve the defenses that we already have.
Is that Raytheon? Is it an old style defense contractor or a company we've never heard of who would make that happen?
It's everybody, and hey, don't write off those folks who have invented how to do hit to kill in the exo atmosphere. You saw what a great job a lot of those missiles did against Iran's attack on Israel. Some of the first combat uses of SM-31B and some others. That's exo atmospheric. That's out in space. That's killing a missile in space. Something like that. But we're going to need everything: counter drone, situation awareness to see where threats are coming from. It's going to take all of our best defense companies, big, small, and medium, in order to improve our missile and defenses against hypersonics here in the U.S.
I learned something with every time I talk to Dr. Rebecca Grant. Just quickly, Doctor, before we hear from Trump, Zelensky, and the others here, if there's one thing we could give Ukraine to help on the ground in the fight, what would it be?
And they'll say more ammunition at this point, especially as Russia continues to press. It would be great to have some authorization to attack some of those Russian strong points behind the lines. So as Britain has done, some authorization to use those slightly longer range precision artillery weapons would be very, very helpful right now. And long term, F-35s.
F-35s, all right. That's a whole other show. You're gonna have to come sit down with us in the studio one of these days. Dr. Rebecca Grant, it's great to see you. And thank you for sharing your experience with us. Vice President, Defense Programs.
Please go to my store. Please go to my store and get the probiotic either in the veggie cap form or in the powdered form. I usually take the powdered form. I mix it with hummus, but you can mix it with filtered water, however you want to take it. But it's very important to take a good probiotic to improve your absorption, to reduce inflammation, and to improve your overall health. We're going to be going to the Trump-Zelensky meeting.
I can tell you the other side isn't exactly in love with, him either. So it's not a question of alignment. I'm aligned with the world. I want to get the things that I'm aligned with Europe. I want to see if we can get this thing done. You want me to be tough? I can be tougher than any human being you've ever seen. I'd be so tough. But you're never going to get a deal that way. So that's the way it goes. One more question.
Hey, I will respond to this. So look, for 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the president of the United States' words mattered more than the president of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So he occupied our parts, big parts of Ukraine, part of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, and I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact
2015.
2014.
2014.
Yeah. So he
I was not here.
Yeah, but
exactly right.
Yes, but during 2014 till 2022, the situation the same. That people have been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him, a lot of conversations, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him, me, like a new president. In 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel, we signed ceasefire. Ceasefire. All of them told me that he will never go. We signed with him with gas contract. Gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broke the ceasefire. He killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yeah, but
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come to the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you see what problems we have?
I have been to, I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military? And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have war.
Don't tell us what we're gonna feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're gonna feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's exactly what I'm not.
You're in no position to dictate what we're gonna feel. We're gonna feel very good.
Feel influence.
We're gonna feel very good and very
You
strong.
will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed
From the
yourself
very-
to be in a
from
very
the
bad
very
position,
beginning
and
of
he
the
happens
war.
to be right about
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having
Not playing
cards.
cards.
Right now, you don't,
I'm
you're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're gambling
I'm
with
the
the lives
president
of
of war.
millions of people.
You think-
You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's
with
back
all
to you,
respect,
far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once this
A lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting, have
today.
you said thank
Even
you?
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you
He's
can.
not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country's in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a minute.
answer?
No, you've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not
I
winning.
know.
You're not winning this.
I,
You have a damn
We-
good chance of
we are
coming out
staying,
okay because of
Mr.
us.
President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone and we are thankful. I said thanks
You haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet.
You
and
haven't been
not
alone.
in this
We
cabinet.
gave you, through
I
this
said
stupid president, $350 billion.
You
We
voted
gave
for
you
your
military equipment.
You
And your
voted
men
for
are brave, but they had to use our military.
What about West?
If you didn't have
You
our
invited
military equipment,
You invited
if
me
you
this
didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
in 3
Okay?
days. I heard it from Putin. In 3 days. This is something
Maybe
new.
less.
In 2 weeks, of course, yes.
It's gonna be a very hard thing to do business like this. I tell you.
Just say thank you.
I said a lot of
Accept that
times.
accept that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're
But
wrong.
you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on. I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards. You're buried there. Your people are dying. You're running low on soldiers. Listen, you're running low on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing. And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting
Of
killed.
course, we want to stop the war.
But you're
I
saying
said-
you don't want a
but I
ceasefire.
said to you,
I want a
with
ceasefire
guarantees.
because you get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't
Doesn't
with
matter for
me.
you what.
That
what
wasn't
is-
with me.
It
That was with
wasn't you.
a guy named Biden who was not a smart person.
This
That
is
was
your-
with,
this
that was
is
with
your
Obama.
president. It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama who gave you sheets and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You gotta be more thankful. Because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
One more question, Mr. Vice President. Sorry.
You're not able to make. Because the attitudes have to change.
What if Russia breaks ceasefire? What if Russia breaks these talks? What will you do then? I understand that it's a heated conversation right now.
What are you saying?
What if
She's asking, what if Russia breaks the ceasefire?
What if anything? what if a bomb drops on your head right now? Okay, what if they broke it? I don't know, they broke it with Biden because Biden, they didn't respect him. They didn't respect Obama. They respect me. Let me tell you, Putin went through a hell of a lot with me. He went through a phony witch hunt where they used him in Russia. Russia. You ever hear of that deal? That was a phony Hunter Biden, Joe Biden scam. Hillary Clinton, Shifty Adam Schiff. It was a Democrat scam. And he had to go through that. And he did go through it. We didn't end up in a war. And he went through it. He was accused of all that stuff. He had nothing to do with it. It came out of Hunter Biden's bathroom. It came out of Hunter Biden's bedroom. It was disgusting. And then they said, oh, the laptop from hell was made by Russia. The 51 agents. The whole thing was a scam. And he had to put up with that. He was being accused of all that stuff. All I can say is this. He might have broken deals with Obama and Bush, and he might have broken them with Biden. He did, maybe he didn't. I don't know what happened. But he didn't break them with me. He wants to make a deal. I don't know if he can make a deal. The problem is, I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing. All right, I think we've seen enough. What do you think? Huh? This is going to be great television. I will say that. All right, we'll see what we can do about putting We'll see.
All right, there you have President Trump, President Zelensky, Vice President J.D. Vance, and others in a very crowded Oval Office in what was a
crazy. Never seen anything like it. But like I said, we will never see a president like Trump again in our lifetime. In these next 4 years are going to be extremely energetic. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the ashwagandha root. This will bring down cortisol levels and help to control your blood glucose levels. Turmeric brings down inflammation. It also soaks up free radicals. It'll help with your cardiovascular health and your immune system. And lignans. It's a powder. You mix it with soft foods or with filtered water. Take it every day. There's a small scooper in here. And this will bring down inflammation, help with your immune system, help with your endocrine system, and also soak up free radicals. Now, if you stack this together, this is a very powerful stack to take every day to improve your immune system and your cardiovascular health. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the lignans, the ashwagandha, the turmeric, help support my work and help support your health. I want you to be healthy in 2025 because there's a lot of Trump in the next 4 years. Well, 3 years and 11 months.
Is something I don't think I've ever seen in 5 decades of Washington statecraft. So I think what we just witnessed was something that, look, I mean, everybody knew Donald Trump kind of, goes his own way. But the idea that this is either good for America, good for Ukraine, or good for the world is nuts. This was an incredible failure of diplomacy. And regardless of what happens today, maybe they get a deal this side. Showing this makes both countries look weak.
Wow. Jeannie, give me your take on this. Was it a conversation? A lot of people stressed out, went off the rails when they heard the wrong words from Volodymyr Zelensky. He wasn't thankful enough, or was this a setup? Did Donald Trump and J.D. Vance plan to do this with the cameras in the room?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big questions hanging over this meeting, in addition to security guarantees, which we could probably forget that question for right now, was
can we work together? You know, Vladimir Zelensky trying to test out, does Donald Trump, like me enough that we can make this happen? And that kind of exchange is just a reminder. And interpersonal relationships matter an awful lot in these things. So that seems to be very clear. There is not a lot of love lost there. And of course, this is quite embarrassing from the perspective of the United States. He is talking to our ally in this war. He's talking to a country invaded by Putin in 2014. 7 million Ukrainians have fled their homeland. We are talking of hundreds of thousands of innocent people now dead, 4 million still displaced. And he is being told from the vice president and the president of the United States, heretofore their allies, that you are not being thankful enough to us as you sit here. And so it is quite an embarrassing spectacle. It does look made for TV from my perspective. You wouldn't believe it unless you saw it firsthand that this was the conversation that they're having. And I can't imagine what it looks like behind the scenes if this is what they're displaying.
Oh my God, yeah. Well, what do you think, Rick? Did this feel spontaneous? And does this torpedo the bilateral news conference they had planned for 10 minutes from now?
You know, it's hard to tell what they're going to do to put this back together, behind closed doors now. It's going to have to take a lot of work because I think both principals are, going back to their neutral corners, ready to come out throwing punches again. Look, I mean, Donald Trump, I think, started out this session pretty constructively. And I must admit, I mean, the interjections by Vice President Vance really stoked a lot of anger in the room and was really counterproductive, I thought. And even Donald Trump at the end tried to bring it back and say, look, we just want to stop the killing and get a deal. And the elements of the deal are there, right? I mean, he's had great meetings this week with leaders of Europe and in France and Great Britain, all of whom have guaranteed certain security measures that they would do in case of a ceasefire or a end of the war. And I mean, like, he was walking in, the president of the United States, into kind of a very positive environment where he could, didn't have to commit to putting troops on the ground, but, could obviously continue to say, we're going to supply you with materials and weapons because you're going to pay for them. And that kind of relationship is traditional for us. I mean, and it's sustainable over time. It's a real mature relationship between U.S. and one of its allies and supporters, Ukraine. So everyone thought this was going to be sort of the beginning of a real mature relationship, one that's post combat conflict. And my impression was that's not something J.D. Vance wanted to see happen today, and set out to try and derail it right there in front of the American public.
Just about a minute or two left here, Jeannie. Donald Trump invoked Vladimir Putin, talked about what they had gone through, how much they went through together during the Russia investigation. He started doing the Russia thing. He got very angry looking as he was referring to this. Also revealed that he just met again recently with Vladimir Putin. Do you think the Russian president had a sense of what this meeting was going to be like?
It's hard to know. We thought this was a win for Vladimir Zelensky, that he got to Donald Trump personally face to face first. And, I think there is going to be some criticism all around, obviously starting with J.D. Vance, but including Vladimir Zelensky. The reality is Ukraine, unfortunately, does not have a lot of cards to play. And those were the exact words that Donald Trump used. I'm not sure he needed to say it that viscerally, but that's what he said, and he's right. That's why Zelensky's task today was to do what they told Queen Victoria: close your eyes and think of England, close your eyes and think of Ukraine. And the reality is he couldn't get there in the face of J.D. Vance's taunting. And so I think he's going to bear some criticism on this as well, because the reality is Ukraine needs the support of the United States if they are going to sustain.
Well, our panel's going to stay with us. Jeannie Shanzano and Rick Davis back in hour 2.
I've never seen anything like that, but I think we need that kind of this. We need that energetic conversation or argument that's going on, because you got a deep state that keeps on wanting to fuel this war and support Ukraine, while Trump is just trying to de-escalate it and get it over with, even though chunks of land are going to be going to Russia. But yeah, Zelensky is playing a dangerous game. If he thinks that he's going to go up against the United States, he's literally going to lose more of his country. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the vitamin C with magnesium. This is great for your skin, also for your immune system. If you're not feeling well because of the cold season, take a double dose, drink it with filtered water because it's water soluble. Also take magnesium and zinc. It helps boost up your immune system. Drink it with filtered water. If you're not feeling well, take a double dose. Take 1 dose in the morning and take 1 dose in the evening if you're not feeling well. And then once you're feeling better, then go back to your maintenance dose of 1 dose a day. You can take these together. It's a great stack to boost up your immune system. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Vitamin C will cross-link with collagen to help build up your dermal layer when you drink about 32 to 64 ounces of water. Take the vitamin C and the collagen together. You drink the 64 ounces of water throughout the day, and over time, your dermal layer is going to improve and you'll get that cross-linking that needs to take place. Now, since I've been talking about the collagen, this is a very high quality collagen peptide powder. You get a big scooper, it's about a month's supply. Mix it with soft foods like hummus or with filtered water, a smoothie. Some people mix it with milk. But take it every day. It helps with your muscles, your joints, your bones, your skin, your hair, your nails. It's a great supplement, very high quality. It has an amino acid profile that's shown on the screen here. You can take a look at the label more closely on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And again, to really, this is a dual purpose product. So if you're doing resistance training, it's going to help with your bones and your joints and your muscles, but it'll also help with your skin, hair, and nails. Now for your skin, taking the vitamin C together with this is important, and then drink the 64 ounces of water throughout the day. It'll cross-link and help with the dermal layer. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the collagen, get the vitamin C. I also have skincare boxes, the anti-aging skincare boxes that has the collagen, the vitamin C, and the structural nanosilver gel. And the advanced box has everything in the beginner's box, but it also has resveratrol and C60. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5 to get $5 off. If you buy a anti-aging box or a longevity box, it automatically has a discount compared to buying products individually. And you can put a discount 5 on top of that. So it behooves you to actually get the anti-aging boxes and the longevity boxes. It saves you money. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. I want these high quality products in your hands because they work. They work. You follow the protocol, this holistic approach, and you're going to get healthier. And the systems that you're targeting are going to improve. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Devolves into an argument. Welcome to the fastest show in politics as President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky meet at the White House to talk about ending the war in Ukraine, intentions to sign a minerals deal. But talks fell apart in front of the cameras and microphones a short time ago. I'm Joe Matthew alongside Kaylee Lyons in Washington. Thanks for being with us on the Friday edition of Balance of Power here on Bloomberg TV and radio. Kaylee, we've never seen anything like that in the Oval Office, and it's unclear what the heck happens now. These two are supposed to have a bilateral news conference starting in just a couple of seconds.
Yeah, I guess we'll see if that goes forward, if this deal they were intending to sign today is able to go forward at all after a meeting, but frankly lacks the dignity you would usually see when heads of state are meeting at the Oval Office at the White House.
Yeah.
What started pretty cordially as President Trump was heralding this deal he said would benefit both the US and Ukraine started to sour, and it does seem it may have happened after President Zelensky suggested that he still needs security guarantees, that this deal alone, this document, is not going to be enough. That is when Vice President J.D. Vance also got involved. Things got heated and frankly loud in there in the aftermath of President Trump suggesting that Zelensky does not hold the cards, and to quote him, "You're gambling with World War III."
Yeah, voices were raised. People were very upset. You either make a deal or we are out, Donald Trump said to President Zelensky, telling him he has to be thankful, and said it's going to be very hard to do business like this. To your point, it's unclear if we get a minerals deal, if we advance to peace talks right now with Vladimir Putin, who Donald Trump says he just recently spoke to. This is quite a moment. If they do get into the East Room as planned for their joint news conference, we'll bring it to you live here on Bloomberg.
Yeah, I guess it's still a question of if that happens at this point. Things are behind closed doors now, so we have less visibility, but we should learn more in short order. We'll have much more on this live with a report from the White House from Bloomberg's Tyler Kendall in just a moment, but we also want to check on the markets, and Charlie Pellet has a look from New York. Hey, Charlie.
Hi, thank you very much, Kayla Lyons. Indeed, all of this playing out on Wall Street. Stocks move from gains to losses as Trump Zelensky plays out on the stock market. We've got the S&P right now down 7, 58.53 where we stand. That is a drop of 0.1%. Dow Jones Industrial Average now lower by 16, little change, down less than 0.1%. The Nasdaq Composite Index down 41, drop there of 0.2%. Nasdaq 100 Index also lower now by 0.2%. Small cap shares, the Russell 2000 Index down by 0.1%. But to be clear, the Dow, the S&P, Nasdaq all had been higher earlier in the session, but all now in the red. We've got the 10-year 4.23%, the 2-year 3.99% now on the 2-year. Spot gold down $32 the ounce, down 1.1%, 28.45, and West Texas Intermediate crude 69.89 a barrel, down 0.6%. Wells Fargo has abandoned its net zero commitment, discontinuing its sector-specific 2030 interim financed emissions targets and its goal to achieve net zero by 2050 for financed emissions. Meanwhile, BlackRock is scrapping its aspirational workforce representation objectives, reversing course on earlier goals after President Trump moved to end the diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI practices. Balance of Power continues right now. Back we go to Washington. Once again, your hosts, Joe Matthew and Kaylee Lyons.
All right, Charlie Pellet with a look at the markets from New York. Thank you so much. Meantime, here in Washington, we've all just been rocked by the tape we saw from the Oval Office, a meeting that is taking place and still is behind closed doors between President Trump, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and others as well, including Vice President J.D. Vance, who was also involved when the conversation took a turn. What was originally supposed to be a visit in which a minerals deal would be signed, maybe other negotiations around ending the war with Russia would be had, has devolved into something where we are now questioning how things move forward. As President Trump suggested, it's going to be difficult to do business with President Zelensky.
Yeah, this is really something. This was a roughly 45 minute long conversation. About halfway through it, once Vice President J.D. Vance started to challenge President Zelensky and ask him why he hadn't been more thankful, voices were raised, and a lot of things were said here, Kaylee, that maybe some of them wish hadn't been said. There's another side of that coin. And you wonder if some of this might have been planned. You wonder how much was spontaneous, knowing that there are, of course, a number of Donald Trump supporters who were hoping to see a conversation like this, who don't like the way that Volodymyr Zelensky has presented himself. Let's bring you in the room for a
You're
moment.
right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't know you're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. It's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once? This entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, you said thank you. You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
We're going to have a conversation ahead with former Ambassador Daniel Freed. First, we want to talk with Nick Wadhams, who leads our national security coverage here in Washington, D.C. Nick?
You know, the problem with Zelensky is he feels as though he's in charge. And he just keeps on asking for more and more money and more support. And the reality of the situation is Ukraine can't continue on the fighting without U.S. support. And the U.S. is tired of it.
And the aid that the U.S. has provided. So an extraordinary moment.
Well, certainly so. And I guess the question, Nick, is now what moments come after this? Things have moved behind closed doors, but initially there was supposed to be an agreement signed in front of the press in the East Room of the White House. That was supposed to be scheduled to happen at this hour. Is there any indication of whether that will still happen?
Well, we are trying to figure that out. I mean, the big question here is, does that go ahead, or are we at an impasse where essentially the relationship is totally broken? I mean, it had been clear for some time that President Trump was not excited about Volodymyr Zelensky. He did at one point call him a dictator, though then in the last day or two he had a turn where it felt like the situation was warming up a little bit. Things were getting better. They thought they had a deal that served Ukraine's interests, essentially punted a lot of questions until later, but gave President Trump a document to show his supporters to say, look, we are going to get something out of this. Now it seems very unlikely to me that the two sides, without some further intervention, would be willing to sit down and actually put pen to paper, put their signatures on that document. And then the whole thing may end up in total collapse, but we'll just have to see in the next hour or so. They're also supposed to have a press conference, and of course, is that going to happen? So,
Great question. We will bring it to our viewers and listeners if it does. Nick, that was scheduled to begin 7 minutes ago, but obviously things were running late before things started getting angry. Donald Trump said to Volodymyr Zelensky, you either make a deal or we are out. You take him at his word?
Yes, I would take him at his word on that. I mean, you know, the thing that's so interesting is this critical minerals deal, when you get down to it, was essentially an agreement to have talks about talks at a later time. So there wasn't really anything in it that actually committed either side to much of anything. And indeed, there was some speculation that this was basically something that Ukraine and some pro-Ukraine lawmakers and others in the United States could put in front of President Trump and say, listen, we got this from them. Now we can get down to the real business of actually having real negotiations, both over this deal, but over a peace agreement later on. So if President Trump essentially backs out and throws himself in with the Russian side, or abandons Ukraine and lets Russia run roughshod over Ukrainian territory, I mean, this is a critical moment. This is just completely unprecedented. So again, we should have more clarity in the next couple of hours and also in the coming days. But what you really saw here was just the eruption of the hostility we had known that President Trump felt about Ukraine from some time, but had been restrained from exhibiting. Now it feels like those shackles are basically off.
All right, Bloomberg's Nick Wadhams, thank you so much with reaction to the footage we've all just seen and watching it alongside us now. Here in our Washington, D.C. studio is Ambassador Daniel Freed, Distinguished Fellow at the Atlantic Council, also former U.S. Ambassador to Poland and former Assistant Secretary of State for Europe, here with us on Bloomberg TV and radio. So obviously we all saw, we all heard the exchange that happened between these three. Ambassador, what do you make of it?
Take a step back. The U.S. has an interest in Ukraine succeeding. Our problems in the world get better if Ukraine survives and prospers. And if Russia wins, our problems get worse. It's been quite a week. Mm-hmm. The Trump plan for Ukraine, as we understand it, could work and was getting some traction. Ceasefire in place, British and French-led force in Ukraine, maybe with American backup, a minerals deal with Ukraine that gives President Trump the ability to say, yeah, I've got a stake in this. That could come together. And now this blow up. Let's hope, best case, that they pull it together. President Trump loves drama for TV. Let's hope that they can pull it together, sign the minerals deal, move forward, because the U.S., the Trump administration could succeed. And Trump could get what he wants, which is to push back on Putin, be seen as doing so, and be seen as a peacemaker. Now, I realize that this may be completely fanciful if in the next few hours this all blows up. I get that. But my job for 40 years, Foreign Service Officer, is to try to look at the way forward. And there is a way forward, which is why my frustration is that the administration keeps stepping on its own policy. This fight in the Oval was not necessary, especially because Zelensky is actually working according to Trump's plan. He's ready to sign the deal. I suspect he's ready to accept a ceasefire if he gets enough security. Trump could win.
No, he wasn't listening to the argument. The argument was that Zelensky didn't want to sign the deal because he felt that there wasn't enough guarantee from the U.S. for defense. That's the whole point of the argument.
That's a good question. I watched it carefully.
If you watched it carefully,
Vice President Vance was provoking Zelensky. I think Zelensky could have answered it differently. He was trying to explain the details. That's not what I would have done or advised him to do. But then you had the president and the vice president basically bullying a Democratic leader who's fighting for his freedom and ours. So I don't see what American interest is advanced by having this fight. Was it deliberate? Was it an ambush? It's possible, but the larger question remains. What do we get out of having a fight? I know what Putin gets. What do we get? We get a lot if Ukraine succeeds. And especially if we get the British and French to carry the heavy load of the security burden. That's quite a success for Trump, success for America. I'm all on board. But the administration has to follow its own plan and not get distracted by this stuff.
Well, on your point, Ambassador, about it being in U.S. interest to see Ukraine succeed to the extent it can, it did seem we saw President Zelensky trying to make that point when he suggested, yes, I know you're here on the other side of the Atlantic, but you could ultimately feel this. President Trump pushed back on that, saying, don't tell us what to feel, but also then later suggested Zelensky right now is toying with World War III, which presumably would involve the U.S. in somehow. We aren't immune to conflicts like that, as we saw with the prior World War. So which is it?
Yeah, President Trump was just wrong about that. We thought we were safe behind two oceans and then Pearl Harbor, right? We figured it out fast. We can't be the lonely bastion of freedom in the world. That's what Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, and Ronald Reagan taught us. And that's the right lesson. And it is the Trump administration in its more wise moments understood that we're in a period of great power rivalry and we have adversaries. Russia, China, Iran. So yeah, let's work with our friends to contend with our adversaries. And Ukraine is our friend. Maybe a little difficult sometimes, but still.
But the president today didn't seem to characterize Russia as an adversary necessarily. When he was asked to feel in the middle, he said, I'm for both Ukraine and Russia. How did you interpret that?
Well, that's not the language I would have used. And I don't think our position at the UN was very good on Monday, where we supported a weak resolution. But if that's the way President Trump wants to play it, okay, play it that way, but then land the deal. And the deal has to provide for Ukraine's security, because if it doesn't, then we've been suckered by the Russians. And in diplomacy, don't be the sucker.
We love talking with practitioners. You're a career diplomat. Bring us into the room, and maybe not an extreme like this, but when a meeting devolves, the reporters have left. Who is in the diplomatic delegation who gets their arms around this? Do people go to separate rooms? What do you do now as a diplomat when the meeting just blew up in your face?
You advise your principal on how to fix it. What do you do to set it right? And what do you do in terms of what's possible for you politically? And someone like me is supposed to find a way forward. So if I were advising President Trump, I would say, look, you made your point. Now tell Zelensky, make light of it. Tell Zelensky we need a deal. Let's show people after we push back that we can do this.
But you get the boss alone in the room right now. Everyone goes cool off for a minute. I need to talk to you alone.
The national security, this is the job for the national security advisor.
Yep.
And I think Mike Waltz is a serious person.
He was right in.
That's right. Now, I also think that Zelensky's people should figure out a way for him to approach Trump and make clear that, yeah, he's grateful to the United States. And yeah, he appreciates Trump's role in pushing things forward. Say that. It's true enough, and it will help. So at moments like this, the pros scramble. Don't wring your hands. Don't complain. Figure out what you're going to do. Figure out the way forward, and do it fast.
Yeah, we'll have this in this conference, Kaylee.
Well, I was just about to ask, Ambassador, do you have confidence that they are able to do that? We'll see these two having corrected or taken the break that they need, facing the press once again this afternoon.
I'm in an impossible position because we didn't know just how wrong I am. I would say this, because it's Donald Trump, who loves drama and twists and turns, he could easily decide to pull it back. He could. Now, I'm not saying he will, but I don't think all is necessarily lost, right? He loves TV drama, and he's got one going. But the drama, you don't milk that drama if you continue the fight. You get more attention and put yourself maybe in a stronger tactical position if you can come out and say, yeah, that was rough, but we've agreed. So if I were advising the president, I would say, okay, you pushed hard, now land a deal.
If you're Donald Trump, you can take credit for saving this day, can't you, if things go right?
That would be my advice. Again, they're not going to ask me, but somebody like me is supposed to advise the president on how to succeed on his terms.
Ambassador, I apologize for interrupting, but we just got a statement from the president, which reads as follows. It's amazing what comes out through emotion, and I have determined that President Zelensky is not ready for peace if America is involved because he feels our involvement gives him a big advantage in negotiations. I don't want advantage, I want peace. He goes on to say, he disrespected the United States of America and its cherished Oval Office. He can come back when he is ready for peace.
Pretty remarkable here.
Well, that's unfortunate, especially because we showed no similar toughness in New York on Monday with a weak UN resolution. Not good, and I don't see what American interest is advanced thereby.
If there was one voice we could have at the table today, it would be Daniel Freed, Ambassador. Thank you so much for being with us at this critical moment in Washington. I'm Joe Matthew, alongside Kaylee Lyons. We'll have much more ahead with our signature panel. This is Bloomberg.
I'll tell you, that was a big argument in the Oval Office. It was something to behold, that's for sure. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver gels that I have. I have it in the quick dispenser or in the tube form. You use them the same way. You can use them as skincare, help to heal a wound. If someone's sick around you at work or at home or at school, put it on your hands, around your eyes, around your ears, around your nose, around your mouth. Lightly coat your nostrils. It stays active for 5.5 hours. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the structural nano silver gel. It's a dual purpose product. You should have this in your house whenever you need it. Trust me, you're going to need it. Like I said, this season is problematic. This season of the cold. So, just be prepared. Please go to my store and get the very easy to digest multivitamin. Multivitamins and minerals are really important as cofactors for enzymatic activity for your cells. Take this multivitamin every day. It's easy to digest. Use it as part of your stack, your health stack that I've been talking about throughout this video to improve your health. Now, there's a lot of ingredients in here for this multivitamin. But to go into more detail, just go on my store, take a look at the label. It's a very high quality multivitamin. It's everything you need as a base, as a traditional multivitamin, and then you build onto that. Now, another great dual purpose product that you could stack with the multivitamin, right, is olive leaf extract. It helps with your immune system and your cardiovascular health, brings down inflammation, and helps to control your total cholesterol. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the olive leaf extract, take it every day. It's a dual purpose product. Stack it with other stuff like omega-3 or the multivitamin, C60. Please go to my store, use discount 5 and get $5 off any order. Olive leaf extract, dual purpose product, great for your health, great for your immune system and your cardiovascular system. All right, let's go to live now because they're replaying what happened in the
I'm a business person. We made a deal. That's what changed. I didn't think we were gonna make a deal. And we ended up making the deal, so that changed.
Mr. President, how do you envision a trilateral summit with President Zelensky and
I don't know, but well, they don't like each other, I can tell you that. They do not like each other. It's not a love match. And it's unfortunate. That's why you're in this situation. The United States should not have allowed this to happen. Okay? The United States, run by a man that didn't know much, I'm gonna be very nice, run by an incompetent person, very incompetent person, should never have allowed this to happen. I've stopped wars. I've stopped many wars. And people will tell you, I stopped wars that nobody ever heard about. I stopped wars before they ever started. You can look at some of, I could give you a lot of nations that would tell you right now they were probably going to war. I could tell you right now there's a nation thinking about going to war on something that nobody in this room has ever even heard about. Two smaller nations, but big, still big. And I think I've stopped it. But this should have never happened.
Sorry, just a second. About any negotiations. First of all, I want really to tell you, and I think that everybody understands that Ukraine, modern Ukrainians, nobody want to stop this war. But in the future, any negotiations, it's understandable that two sides of the war, not Russia and the United States, because this is not the war between Russia and the United States. This is war of Russia against Ukraine and Ukrainian people. So these two sides will be at the anyway will be at the negotiation table. Then of course United States, like the strongest partner of the Ukraine, and of course Europe. I think Europe is very important. I want to speak about it with the president. Yes, Europe is very important for us because we really defend Europe for today. All Europeans really recognize that we are defending life and they have real life and our people are dying. That's why they helped us. And also it's about the NATO. Yes, between, like the president said, you have big, nice ocean. Yes.
Okay, Bloomberg is breaking some news about Trump, saying that they're not ready for peace.
The Oval Office for this conversation was really once Vice President J.D. Vance started to address and challenge Volodymyr Zelensky about not being thankful enough that things started to get chippy. By the time Donald Trump was speaking.
Let's go back to live now. There's a lot going on.
People will not say, you will fight. You are American soldiers. It doesn't matter, do you have ocean or not, your soldiers will fight.
Mr. President, would you be willing to visit Ukraine? We gave it for Odessa, which is going to be a 30-year-old legacy.
It was my question.
I don't want to talk about Odessa. Let's not talk about Odessa. I want to talk about making a deal, getting peace. We don't have to talk about Odessa, but a lot of cities have been destroyed. A lot of cities that are not recognizable. There's not a building standing.
No.
And a lot of
things. You have to come and to look. No. We have very good cities. Yes, a lot of things have been destroyed, but mostly cities alive and people work children go to school. Sometimes it's very difficult. Sometimes closer to front line, children have to go to underground schools or online. But we live. Ukraine is fighting, and Ukraine lives. This is very important. And maybe it's Putin is sharing this information that he destroyed us. But he lost 700,000 people. 700,000 soldiers he lost everything. Yes.
One more. Please, go ahead.
When did you last speak as a student, and what did he say that?
Couple of days ago.
And what did he tell you that gave you the assurance that he wanted peace?
Well, that's what I do. My whole life is deals. I know pretty good. And I've known him for a long time. I've dealt with him for a long time. He had to suffer through the Russia hoax. You know, Russia was a hoax. It was all Biden. It was nothing to do with him. So he had to.
You notice that Zelensky was defensive on these questions before they got into their big argument. Because Zelensky wants to continue the war. He wants the money to continue flowing because there's corruption going on in Ukraine. And not only that, he's going to probably lose. Zelensky's probably going to lose an election. So he has to continue the war to stay in politics.
In the back, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Prime Minister Obama claimed repeatedly that his government believes in free speech and is not engaged in censorship. But his country's government arrests people for memes and thought crimes, and even more worrisome is pressuring American companies to censor Americans on his behalf. How can he be a reliable, trustworthy partner when he says things that are demonstrably false on such a profile?
Well, we actually spoke to him about that yesterday, and we thought they took it very, very much too far. JD was very strong on it. So was I, and so was Marco. And we've been speaking to him about it. Marco, would you like to say something about it?
We have concerns, obviously, with the conduct of those, particularly as it impacts Americans. And there's real concern that American speech, which is online, could fall into the hands of British or any country's jurisdiction. And so this is a point the Vice President made in Munich, and I think it's a very compelling one that unites us with Europe. But much as anything else is these shared values, and one of them being free speech. And so if Americans are threatened by it, we're going to need to take action in that regard.
It's actually a very important question.
We spoke about this in detail with the Prime Minister, the Foreign Secretary, and others at lunch yesterday. And I know that Secretary of Commerce Lutnick followed up in private meetings last night. This is really important. We believe Americans have the right to speak their mind, even if we in this room disagree with them. They have the right to speak their mind in the public square, which is often online these days. And we're going to defend that right as it pertains to American companies and American citizens vigorously if we have to. I do think that under the president's leadership, we're going to find common ground with our friends in the UK on this question, but it remains to be seen. The principle that will guide us is we believe in free speech in this country and we'll fight for it for American citizens.
Mr. President, on the deal, is there any other oil and gas component to the deal? Is it all
A little bit. We'll see.
on LNG?
But we're not really looking for that so much. We got a lot. We have more than anybody in the world by far. So no, we're not talking about it too much, but a little bit. I think it affects also, but for the most part, no.
And sir, is there any agreement from Ukraine to purchase US LNG as part of the deal, or is that on the table?
No, we don't need that.
Some of those minerals are in the
Ask you about it. You just mentioned that you guys spoke to Dan in a couple of days ago. Just to be clear, that's a new call, not the one that you.
I've spoken to him on numerous occasions.
Okay. And how was the latest call? What did you discuss? How did it go?
Are you serious with that question? It went well. I think we're going to have a deal.
On the minerals deal, Mr. President, some of those minerals are in the east of Ukraine, not far from the front lines and in areas that Russia has occupied. Will you direct President Putin to withdraw his forces from those areas if there's U.S. interest?
Well, we'll take a look at the time. We have a lot of area. It's a very big area we're talking about. So we'll take a look. I'll study that and I'll see.
And who would protect those minerals if they are U.S. interests? Would that be Ukrainian?
Well, we protect them. The agreement will protect them.
US
The agreement, yeah, we're signing an agreement.
What if Russia tries to invade or there's Russian aggression in response?
I just told you, I don't think that's gonna happen. And if that were gonna happen, I wouldn't make a deal. If I thought that was gonna happen, I wouldn't make a deal.
Some people wonder why.
You gotta focus on CNN on survival, not asking me these ridiculous questions. Focus on surviving, because CNN's got such low ratings, I don't think they're gonna survive Let's go. Please.
I already mentioned Poland. Poland was under Russian control for decades after the Second World War. When I was a kid, I looked at the United States not only as a most powerful country, richest country in the world, the country that has great music, great movies, great muscle cars, but also as a force for good. And now I'm talking with my friends in Poland, and they are worried that you align yourself too much with Putin. What's your message for them?
Well, if I didn't align myself with both of them, you'd never have a deal. You want me to say really terrible things about Putin and then say, "Hi, Vladimir, how are we doing on the deal?" It doesn't work that way. I'm not aligned with Putin. I'm not aligned with anybody. I'm aligned with the United States of America and for the good of the world. I'm aligned with the world, and I want to get this thing over with. You see the hatred he's got for Putin. It's very tough for me to make a deal with that kind of hate. He's got tremendous hatred, and I understand that. But I can tell you the other side isn't exactly in love with, him either. So it's not a question of alignment. I'm aligned with the world. I want to get the thing set. I'm aligned with Europe. I want to see if we can get this thing done. You want me to be tough? I can be tougher than any human being you've ever seen. I'd be so tough. You're never going to get a deal that way. So that's the way it goes. One more question.
I have to respond to this. So look, for 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and
Something's happening at the White House right now. There.
Be part of the pool today, but there will be a throng of reporters. I believe Josh Wingrove described it as a zoo when he got there earlier this morning. They're in the driveway, as you can see now on Bloomberg TV and on YouTube. The vehicle that brought Volodymyr Zelensky to the White House is waiting for him just outside the West Wing entrance. And if we were able to pull out a bit, you'd see the sticks, as they call it, the stakeout position where microphones and cameras are waiting for him. So, Kaylee, he may well take some questions. We'll find out together.
Indeed, and while we await to find out, we turn back to our signature political panel who was with us today, Rick Davis and Jeannie Shanzano, both Bloomberg Politics contributors. Rick, given what we all just listened to, again, the tone, the language that these three were using with each other in the Oval Office, of all places, are you surprised that things cannot move forward in the aftermath, or at least don't seem to be moving forward now?
Yeah, you would think that they'd set aside the emotion that the statement referred to from the White House and regroup with their teams. I can imagine National Security Advisor Walz is in conversation.
The press conference is canceled. This is huge.
Trying to make
this is huge, huge, huge. The press conference is canceled between Zelensky and Trump. Now, usually they have discussions. They go into the Oval Office, take press questions, then have additional discussions, and then they have a conference, a big press conference where they're sitting at two different podiums. That podium part of this is canceled. That means the whole deal blew up. We just saw this. We just saw the Ukrainian war peace agreement blow up right in front of our eyes. This is going to get worse. And Zelensky blew it up. Zelensky's an idiot.
And it's going to be a big step backwards in stopping the fight that Donald Trump claims is his #1 priority. Stop the bloodshed.
High fives in the Kremlin, Jeannie. Would it be smart politically for Zelensky to come out of that West Wing entrance we're looking at right now and take questions from reporters, try to make this case, or does he dig the hole deeper for Ukraine?
You know, it is such a tough call for Zelensky. He had one big job to do, which was to try to mend a heretofore difficult relationship with Donald Trump today. And the clip you played is so important because you can hear him at the offset of that trying, fairly innocently to explain to JD Vance and the president the history. He is a war leader for 3 years. The history of his country going back to 2014, the 2 Minsk agreements signed that Vladimir Putin, after invading his country, did not live up to, and trying to explain to them why they cannot trust, or he cannot trust, Putin to live up to an agreement now. And then you hear JD Vance come in like quite frankly, like he was talking to one of his young children or something, berating Zelensky. And then of course, Donald Trump jumped right into that. And the reality is that this is going to be very, very tough to repair. It doesn't mean we won't get that rare earth mineral deal, but this goes so far beyond that. And I think one thing to watch for here is, can Marco Rubio and Waltz, who are more interventionist in the traditional sense, walk Donald Trump off the ledge here and walk this back and get this deal back on track? I don't know if it's possible, but there is a big division in this administration between those who are non-interventionists, like JD Vance, who, by the way, in the Senate did not support aid for Ukraine, and those like Rubio and Waltz. And we have to see if they can bring Donald Trump back to the idea that a deal on the rare mineral or rare earth minerals would give us a leg up economically, and then that would sort of, lay the groundwork for them to move forward with a potentially relationship to be built on with Zelensky. But very, very tough for Zelensky. 3 years at war, so many people dead and displaced, to have to listen to the vice president demanding that he be express more gratitude, and quite frankly, the ahistorical, renditions of what has happened in his own country.
Well, to Jeannie's point, Rick, as we consider the cast of characters here beyond just the president and vice president, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, those who are more hawkish in Congress, who have long supported Ukraine. I'm thinking here of Senators Lindsey Graham and others. Do you expect a collective voice here could come to check the impulses of the president and vice president on this one, or is it ultimately what they say that will go? Because President Trump is suggesting he's communicating directly with Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, Kaylee. What the net effect's going to be with the president's leaders in Republican Party, who are, as you described them, more hawkish toward the Kremlin. So we've not seen much evidence of that, although many of them did come out and vocally reinforce the fact that when the president called Zelensky a dictator, they pushed back on that and made it clear that Vladimir Putin's the dictator. So that being said, they have not Congress has not played even a marginal role in the peace process, if you want to call it that, after today. And so I can't imagine anybody's going to want to stick their neck out too soon after this debacle to see where it goes from here. So I think everyone's going to wind up taking a big step back and assess the damage in our relationships that this will result from. The relationship with our ally, the Ukraine's, NATO members, and what their reaction to this is going to be. Other members of our global partners and allies that we have who see this Ukraine war as a microcosm of conflicts around the world that could be to come. And this is obviously going to fan a lot of insecurity in every corner of the world after today.
Pretty remarkable optics, Jeannie. I think we can agree. And there were things not captured on the cameras that were pointed at Trump, Zelensky, JD Vance, and others. Ukrainian Ambassador Oksana Markarova, who has joined us on this program, put her head in her hands as the shouting match took place in the Oval Office. Jeannie, it says a lot when we consider that particular moment, and I wonder what it means for Ukraine and how much may have been lost today.
Yeah, Joe, I'm so glad you mentioned that photo. I saw that photo as well, and I think it is just so worth reflecting on how much it encapsulates really the shock and horror for Ukrainians who have seen in just a matter of a few weeks their closest ally, the United States, essentially switch sides. You now have an administration echoing Vladimir Putin talking points And, you know, Rick was talking about the Kremlin cheering. People are talking about them popping champagne. This is the best case scenario for Putin. And this is, you know, again, a war-torn country. It has been for over a decade. Russia occupies 20% of Ukraine. And what Zelensky was trying to school, and maybe it wasn't the time to do this, President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance on, is the reality of that, how much has been lost. And, you know, he was interrupted by demands for, you know, pledging fealty to the president. So, yeah, that picture is absolutely stunning and speaks volumes about what Ukrainians and, quite frankly, Europeans and allies of the United States around the world must be feeling today, watching this implosion in the Oval Office.
Well, meanwhile, we're watching what's happening outside the West Wing as photographers are now emerging from the doors. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is now, if you're with us on Bloomberg TV or on YouTube for the benefit of our radio audience, getting into his vehicle. So he is leaving the White House after, again, President Trump told him he can come back when he is ready for peace. He has now gotten into the vehicle. I would imagine, Joe, in short order, we're going to see it leave the White House complex and go elsewhere from there, knowing this is not how Zelensky originally intended for the afternoon to go. The intention initially, at least it was understood, was to be signing a deal on minerals today, but obviously that is not how things have gone down, as Zelensky is now in the car and others from the delegation appear to be leaving the White House.
Streaming out of the West Wing right now, reporters standing by in the driveway, not likely to be very nourished with what we're getting here. Our reporter, Tyler Kendall, on the ground at the White House, says they are preparing to open the Northwest Gate to let him out of the campus. Having stayed the night at the Hay Adams Hotel, Kaylee, he was not at Blair House as we saw the other leaders inside the White House complex. It's pretty clear he's not going to be taking questions here. In fact, he came out of that door rather quickly. The rest of the delegation is being put into a van. Once they get out of there here, we'll see what's left.
The peace agreement blew up.
We get a statement from
blew up.
One thing I will make clear to our viewers and listeners is we have an important interview that's coming up. Bloomberg's David Weston is supposed to be talking with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent about an hour and 15 minutes from now. I suspect the trajectory of that conversation will be a bit different than it would have been a few hours ago.
Yeah, knowing Bessent was the one initially dispatched to Ukraine to present the first iteration of this minerals agreement. It ended up looking very different in terms of what was going to be signed today as the U.S. pulled back demands of the numbers reaching 500 billion and some other things. But Bessent was deeply involved in this work. So we'll, of course, hear from him, the Treasury Secretary, as we now see the van carrying the Ukrainian delegation and the vehicle with President Zelensky in it leaving the White House complex. And it is worth noting as well, Volodymyr Zelensky was scheduled to have an interview on Fox this evening. He did not speak to press as he was leaving the White House just now, but we could still hear from him later on today as he characterizes his own version of the day's events. Again, events that to this point look like they have not benefited the prospects of a deal being reached between the U.S. and Ukraine, and untold what that will mean for the ultimate deal the Trump administration is trying to negotiate to end the war with Russia.
If you're just joining us on Bloomberg TV and radio, we were supposed to be bringing you a joint news conference between Trump and Zelensky at this time. It has been canceled after a meeting in the Oval Office turned sour. Voices were raised, an argument was had, and frankly, it's unclear exactly where this relationship is going and what the status of talks are with Ukraine and with Russia. We're spending time with our signature panel right now, Rick Davis and Jeannie Shanzano, as we try to get our heads around everything that just happened here.
Please go to my store, vlad-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the digestive enzyme complex. This will help to reduce the load on your pancreas. It breaks up carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. If you work out, if you're an athlete, take digestive enzyme complex to help to break up your pre or post workout fuel. And if you're just older, 40 years of age or older, take digestive enzyme complex to just help with digesting food. And by reducing that load on your pancreas, you're going to add the lifespan of the pancreas. But please take my advice, stack with digestive enzyme complex to break up those proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids, so you get that proper absorption without overloading your pancreas. It's really important. And detoxify your body with zeolite. You can take this every day. Take 2 drops underneath your tongue, small drops, drink filtered water. Do that every day. It'll soak up toxins, chemicals, heavy metals. It'll allow you to urinate those toxins out in about 6 to 8 hours. And you do that every day. Now, some people prefer to do a little bit more intense cleanse, but only do that once or twice a year. For those people, take 4 or 5 drops underneath your tongue, drink the filtered water, small drops, drink the filtered water, do that every day until the bottle is empty, and then do that maybe once or twice a year. It's up to you, but you can take the zeolite every day. So what is also important is make sure you filter your water and stay away from processed foods and clean your environment. Stay away from heavy chemicals in your household. You're breathing those in and you're being exposed on a daily basis. And that does affect your endocrine system and your immune system. So please go to my store and get the zeolite. Use discount 5.
I don't put any of this on Zelensky, but his reactions didn't result in a meeting that was constructive either. And so both teams are assessing that to this minute to determine where they go from here.
I think we had all drawn this conclusion already, but Bloomberg is now confirming with sources familiar that the US and Ukraine did not sign that minerals deal today. They failed to sign the agreement on natural resources. Jeannie, it's also worth pointing out, as we have just seen now, a third world leader leaving the White House this week. This follows a meeting which, by all accounts, seemed to be successful between President Trump and the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer yesterday, a similar one with the French President Emmanuel Macron on Monday. Where is Europe in all of this? Having just had those meetings, having those two countries having pledged support for peacekeeping troops if a deal is ultimately agreed to, how are our allies likely viewing what went down today?
Well, they have to just be as stunned as we all are. I mean, this was supposed to be, to your point, Kelly, the bookend of this week of meetings that started off with Macron and Starmer and seemed, at least on the face of them, to have been pretty successful in terms of, trying to pull Donald Trump over to the recognition that the United States has a role to play in securing the future of Ukraine. And that is obviously not at all what we've seen go on here. And I do think we have to think long and hard now about this deal. This deal was first broached by Zelensky last year. It seems to have been Waltz and Rubio who tried to bring it up again as a means to get Donald Trump on board, because we know he likes to make deals. And this would allow us to get as many rare earth minerals maybe as China, or at least move in that direction. But all along the way, he has been no friend of Vladimir Zelensky or Ukraine. And of course, now he is a vice president who has long expressed consternation about our support of Ukraine. So, as we watch this go down, I am not so sure that it is going to be resurrected quite as easily as some people think. Because for Donald Trump, this is, a sense that he has long had, that there are points at which Vladimir Putin has spoken that he reiterates often, and he has a very, very different view of the war in Ukraine than the United States have expressed prior.
Jeannie Shanzano and Rick Davis, our signature panel, Bloomberg Politics contributors on a breaking news Friday here in Washington, D.C. I'm Joe Matthew alongside Kaylee Lyons. We want to bring you back to the White House right now. You just saw President Zelensky's SUV with a van carrying the Ukrainian delegation head right down the driveway out of the complex, as Rick said, across Lafayette Park to the Hay Adams Hotel. They drove right by our tent on the North Lawn, where we find Bloomberg's Tyler Kendall right now with the latest. What else is going on there, Tyler?
Well, Joe, just a stark difference from when Zelensky arrived at the White House this morning. He was greeted by an honor guard, 56 service members carrying flags of each of the U.S. states and territories greeted him. I watched him and President Trump have that handshake right in front of the West Wing, and then just how quickly this has devolved. I mean, waiting for Zelensky to come out here on the White House North Lawn, every reporter came out. You could hear a pin drop as we waited for that door to open. Ultimately, with Zelensky coming out, not answering any of our questions. We also saw the rest of his delegation pile into their vans as they slowly drove out of these northwest gates right behind me. So big developments about what happens here next. We're waiting to see if we get any additional information from this White House, if they're going to brief us reporters about what the next steps are coming. But Bloomberg News confirming that that critical minerals deal was not signed, something that President Trump said was critical for the U.S. To move forward when it comes to negotiations to end this war in Ukraine.
All right, Bloomberg's Tyler Kendall live at the White House on a historic day. I think we can all say thank you so much. And we want to add the voice now of Kelly Grieco, Senior Fellow with the Stimson Center's Reimagining U.S. Grant Strategy program, with us here on Bloomberg TV and radio. Kelly, we have been checking in with you throughout the duration of this war, which is now, of course, in its fourth year. And we should all bear in mind that the President Zelensky, who we just saw leave the White House, is also leading a country who is still actively at war. And I wonder how this scene playing out, and Vladimir Putin obviously going to be able to bear witness to this, impacts what will actually be happening on the ground, and how things move forward from here.
Yes, well, thank you for having me. I will say it's I'm a little speechless having just watched what happened. You know, I think the good news, if there is any at the moment, is that just in the last few days, the Ukrainian government has said publicly that they're able to sustain themselves in terms of funds, equipment, and ammunition for at least the first half of this year. So there won't be an immediate impact on the battlefield in terms of material shortages. The only thing I can anticipate, if there, for some reason, the United States cut them off of information, intelligence sharing. We've been providing a lot of ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance information that helps the Ukrainians with targeting. And if that was to be cut off, or if they were to lose access to Starlink, which of course is a Musk company, that would have a major impact.
It's pretty remarkable, to your point, Kelly. I never thought we'd be talking about a moment like this. Everyone we're talking with is sharing the same sentiment that you have here. It's like that moment you can't believe you're getting into a fight, or was it? Was that stagecraft at the same time? This is a conversation that a lot of Donald Trump supporters were probably looking forward to hearing and seeing, not fans of President Zelensky. And they don't think that he has been grateful enough. What's your thought?
Yes, I mean, I will say that my interpretation of what happened is I see it as, it looked to me like he was baited, to be honest. I think the administration was probably unhappy with his remarks at Munich, which is sort of a rebuke of the administration. I think they're concerned in the administration that Zelensky is an impediment to peace, that he is the hardest piece in some ways maybe to get peace, because he's still very stuck on ambitious goals for Ukraine that may not be realistic. And I think there's some probably desire to maybe publicly try to rein him in. And this seems to me like it was a tactic. It just seemed like a sort of a setup, right? Because he didn't initiate this confrontation. It was initiated by, the vice president. Zelensky did not handle this well, to be very clear. He fell for the bait. That's clear for sure. But I think that, how this plays out, this is a risky strategy. How this plays out with the American public is going to be very interesting, because on the one hand, there's this sense that Zelensky has maybe not been sufficiently grateful, and that we've done a lot. But it also looks a little bit like the president is, publicly humiliating a wartime democratic leader of another country. And so how that plays out is hard to say. But this is clearly a very bad moment. And I think the real sign to me will be whether Zelensky stays in DC or not, and there's a second meeting, or if he ends up going home.
Well, I guess we're all waiting to find out. Meantime, you're seeing plenty of reaction pouring in on social media, Kelly. The Prime Minister of Poland, Donald Tusk, saying, "Dear Zelensky," tagging him on Twitter, "Dear your Ukrainian friends, you are not alone." And with that said, Kelly, we just have a minute left here, but even if the US were to say, all right, we're done with Ukraine now, all of our backing is gone, is Europe able to step in to fill that void?
They can fill a lot of voids, but there are certain niche capabilities like Patriot interceptors, space-based capabilities that they're not able to replace, that only the United States has those.
It's great to have you with us. Kelly Grieco, Senior Fellow, Stimson Center, Reimagining U.S. Grand Strategy Program, one of many voices of experience we've brought to you over the past couple of hours here on Bloomberg TV and radio. After this meeting in the Oval Office went south, Kayleigh, we'll be back at 5 p.m. Anything could happen between now and then as we try to figure out, as Kelly just mentioned, if they're leaving town or maybe some attempt to get back in the room.
Yeah, we do know that President Zelensky and the Ukrainian delegation have left the White House, but they have not yet left Washington, nor have they made plans to expedite that process, to our knowledge, at least, though they did not, at least at this time, sign that natural resources deal with the United States. Again, that is what was supposed to happen today. We were expecting to see it, in fact, at this hour. And that, of course, is not moving forward, as President Trump is suggesting that Vladimir Zelensky today is gambling with World War III.
Yeah, we heard some pretty wild rhetoric together. That's what you could expect on this program every day from Washington, D.C. We'll bring it to you unfiltered and live when we can, and we'll let you know what's going on when we get back together. 5 p.m. Eastern here on the fastest show in politics. Alongside Katie Lyons, I'm Joe Matthew. This is Bloomberg.
Pope is suffering. Breaking news, Pope is suffering bronchial spasm at the moment.
Service is going to be held for the Pope, taking place in St. Peter's Square. It's going to be similar to several of those prayer services that we have been airing here as we continue to monitor the Pope's condition and bring you all of those updates when we get them. Bringing it back here to the United States and some more live pictures that we are just getting into our newsroom. I do want to take you out to Detroit, Michigan, where we are seeing here several more protests continuing to happen. As you know, many federal workers have been laid off due to some recent budget cuts put forth by President Trump's administration. This particular rally is being held again in Detroit, Michigan. Let's watch.
My daddy used to tell me all the time, son, don't start your trouble. But if trouble knocks on your door, we'll stand together as family. Right? We'll stand together as family. Right? And the story told by the little boy that used to go to school, and the bigger boys would always pick on him, and Daddy would remember what Daddy told him. And so he quit going to school that went inside to go another way to keep down trouble. But the big boy said, we're gonna go and we're gonna catch him at home before he leaves going to school, and we're gonna knock on his head, we're gonna push him, we'll do all the things we want to do. And they showed him at the boy's house that day. And the little boy looked up at his dad and said, Daddy, you told me not to start no trouble. But if trouble knocks on our door, we'll do what? We'll stand together as family. Will we stand together as family? Are we family?
gonna go back to Bloomberg here.
President Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and the U.S. and Ukraine not signing that minerals deal.
All right, that we're going to get to in just a moment. Plus, an unexpected drop in U.S. consumer spending, which we know is so important to the U.S. economy. And Tim, we'll also get another view on the U.S. economy.
All that, yeah, we're going to be joined by the CFO of Kava. She's going to talk growth, food cost expansion, and those garlic ranch pita chips. One of your favorites. I know that from us.
Love me some garlic. All right, let's get to it. And let's get a check on the trade because we definitely seen some reaction to what's come out of the White House today. Over to Charlie Pellet.
Thank you very much. Here's what's going on. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, all very much in the red as we wrap up a volatile trading month and a wild Friday to cap it off. Right to the numbers here. We are back in the red, swinging between gains and losses, but the S&P now lower by 958.52 where we stand on the S&P 500 index, down now by 0.1%. We got the Dow down 30, drop there of 0.1%. NASDAQ lower by 45, now down by 0.3%. The Russell 2000 index of small cap shares down 0.2%. The 10-year 4.21% with a 2-year currently yielding 3.98%. Spot gold down $31 the ounce, 28.46, drop there of 1.1%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil down 0.4%, 70.40 a barrel on WTI, and Bitcoin now higher, up 0.4%, 84,640 in Bitcoin. BlackRock is scrapping its aspirational workforce representation objectives, reversing course on earlier goals after President Trump moved to end diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI practices. And we also got Wells Fargo abandoning its net zero commitment, discontinuing its sector-specific 2030 interim finance commissions targets, and its goal to achieve net zero by 2050 for finance emissions. So again, recapping, a lot of volatility. All of a sudden, the Dow back in the green, up 20, up by 0.1%. The S&P, however, lower, down now by 1 point. For on-demand news, 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now, wherever you get your podcasts, and keep it locked into Bloomberg Television and Radio for the very latest. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Hey, thanks for that update, Charlie. Do appreciate it. Well, news out of Washington certainly front and center. And at 3 p.m. Wall Street time, Bloomberg's David Weston, host of Wall Street Week, will be talking live with U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, 3 o'clock on Bloomberg TV and Bloomberg Radio.
And on that restart in the nation's capital, the U.S. and Ukraine, as Tim mentioned earlier, did not sign a minerals deal as many expected on developing Ukraine's natural resources. This is according to a U.S. official. The outcome following a heated exchange earlier at the White House between President Trump, Ukrainian President Zelensky, and Vice President J.D. Vance.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't know you play cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should.
Have you said thank you once?
A lot of times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting,
today.
you said thank you.
Even today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
All right, that, of course, is President Trump, President Zelensky, and Vice President J.D. Vance earlier from the Oval Office. We should point out that the Ukrainian delegation has left the White House. We do want to get kind of a rundown on where we are in the relationship between the United States and Ukraine, what might come next. Back with us in our Washington, D.C. bureaus, Bloomberg News senior White House and politics correspondent Gregory Cordy. Gregory, President Trump, President Zelensky, Vice President J.D. Vance arguing in the Oval Office, bickering between world leaders in front of reporters. I would even go as far to argue behind closed doors. That just doesn't typically happen, does it?
Yeah, I've covered the White House in one way or another for more than a decade, and obviously have watched Oval Office meetings like this on TV for decades before that. I'm struggling to think of a single meeting between world leaders that I've ever seen that devolved as quickly and as contentiously as that one did. The bickering, the tone, And you just showed sort of the middle of it. It started off actually pretty cordial. President Trump has an ability to tailor his message to the world leader that is coming into the Oval Office. And it was really Vice President J.D. Vance who kind of pulled the pin on a rhetorical grenade and just dropped it on the floor, saying that Zelensky should be thanking the United States, that he's in no room to bargain. And that's really when the meeting went off the rails. He left without the critical minerals deal being signed, and really with the future of the U.S.-Ukraine relationship, and indeed the war with Russia very much hanging in the balance.
So it raises the question where these three countries are left off. We did hear from the president following that meeting in the Oval Office. He did say that he's determined that President Zelensky is not ready for peace if America is involved. He says he disrespects the United States of America. He can come back when he is ready for peace. Where does this leave the war in Ukraine?
Well, obviously, it leaves it continuing to go on without the sort of the offices of the United States trying to broker some kind of a deal. But the real question is, where is the U.S. support after this? Does President Trump really just sort of cut Ukraine off from any kind of U.S. assistance, say that it's Europe's problem, and really leave Ukraine at the mercy of Russian troops? Trump pressed Zelensky on the issue of conscription, of how he's having to increasingly draft more and more forces to come to the Russian front, saying he's in a bad position, no position to negotiate. Zelensky himself admitted, obviously, when you're in a war, you have problems, and manpower and conscripting troops is certainly one of them. This is a war of attrition that's been going on for 3 years. Both sides have been depleted, but obviously Russia, with the bigger country, probably has the advantage the longer this war goes on.
We should point out a headline crossing that Mexico has opened to new tariffs on China to avoid those duties expected from the Trump administration. Hey, Gregory, not sure what anyone gets out of geopolitically of having a public fight, but just wondering, since we are living in unusual times, many would argue, might there be some performance element to this? Can we even dare to go there?
You're right to ask that question, and I think if I'm a world leader or even a citizen of the United States, and I'm watching that meeting, I think you should have the same question. Even Trump, at the end of that exchange, said, "Well, this is made for great television." There's a performance aspect to everything that President Trump does, and I'm not saying that critically at all. He's a guy who comes from the world of tabloid coverage in New York City. He's been in the public limelight his entire life, and he was a TV star on The Apprentice, where conflict in a boardroom was a whole part of the plot, right? And so this is perhaps an extension of that. Perhaps this is part of the art of the deal. But even so, we've seen Trump in a lot of these kinds of meetings that did not go as far as this one, really off the rails and towards a very acrimonious exchange there.
Gregory, I'm so glad you brought up his book, Art of the Deal. And again, not speaking out of turn, but President Trump likes to make deals. So can we assume that walking away, the fight that came out, he expected, I would assume, a deal to be made. And so can we still assume that he wants to make a deal so that he can help bring this war to an end?
You know, there's two people who can answer that, and that's Volodymyr Zelensky and Donald Trump. Anytime you have two principles like this that depart a meeting as contentious as this one, one side is going to have to break the ice and reach out to the other side and see if there's something that they can salvage here. It's unclear to me, obviously, at this hour, just the minutes after Zelensky has been by all appearances kicked out of the White House, where that overture would come from, whether there's an olive leaf, an olive branch, left to be extended to try to put something back together while Zelensky is still in town.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Hey, one thing I was thinking was the role of J.D. Vance in this Oval Office meeting. And look, nothing typical happened in this meeting today. No question about that. There's nothing typical about this entire situation. But still, I was pretty surprised to see the vice president take such an active role. Did that surprise you?
It did. I was on Joe Matthews' show, Balance Power, at noon, and we opened this meeting with me saying look, this is a meeting of two world leaders. They will try to find some common ground, as world leaders always do. And that's the way the meeting started. And then, in an almost cinematic way, the camera zoomed back out, and we saw that Vance was on the couch. At least when I started watching this meeting, I wasn't even aware that Vance was in the room. And then as Vance began to talk, he's the one who really kind of took this in a different direction. And it's a very interesting role for him. He seems to have carved out a national security specialty in this first month of the Trump administration, giving that speech at the security conference, doing a little tour of Europe, talking to our friends and allies. But he's also been a long-time Ukraine critic and a skeptic of U.S. involvement in helping Ukraine fight this war with Russia. And so his very involvement of this probably should have presaged that this meeting was not going to go as well as maybe Vladimir Zelensky had hoped.
All right, so Gregory, we've seen President Zelensky exiting the White House. Do we know, is the Ukrainian delegation expected to go back to Ukraine today, tomorrow? Do we know anything about what this weekend looks like now?
Yeah, that's something that I can't answer, except to say that these meetings increasingly involve more than just the President of the United States. They involve, obviously, the State Department's going to be involved, but also, Zelensky has been very astute in public diplomacy in dealing with the West and particularly the United States, forging relationships on Capitol Hill, forging relationships in civil society. We understand that his scheduled interview with Fox News tonight is still on as of at least half an hour or so ago when Fox News tweeted out that they have not heard anything to the contrary. And so he's going to try to continue to build at least public support and congressional support for the Ukrainian war effort, even if that support is not going to come from the person who matters most, who is President Donald Trump.
I wonder if perhaps there could be an unscheduled visit to Mar-a-Lago over the weekend. Again, I don't know anything about this. I'm just speculating here about his time here in the United States. Gregory, where does this leave Volodymyr Zelensky in terms of what he goes back to Ukraine and tells his country? What's his message to NATO following this meeting?
Yeah, that's going to be a tough return because he arguably returns to Europe in a worse place than when he got here. At the very least in this kind of diplomatic situation, you just want to do no harm. Even if you don't make progress, you don't want to end up in a worse position. And he's arguably in a much worse position than when he started. And he's going to have to, if the support is not going to come from the United States, he's going to have to pass the hat in Europe, which is, frankly, Western Europe has its own problems, its own economic difficulties. And this may be exactly what President Trump intends, right? He's been talking for a month and indeed for years about the need for Europe to come to the table and pay more of their fair share towards collective security, to make more guarantees of aid to Ukraine, to not have the United States.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Let me tell you this great stack to help improve your bone health and your cardiovascular health. D3 and K2 with some resistance training and taking calcium, either through drinking milk or a calcium supplement, will help to build bone density. But it's important that you do resistance training, take the D3 and the K2 together. But also D3 and K2 help to reduce the chances of calcium depositing around plaque that has already formed. And also to build onto that synergistic effect for cardiovascular health. Nattokinase is fibrinolytic, so it's going to break up clots, but it helps with your total cholesterol. It's going to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. So it's going to improve your total cholesterol. So taking these together is a great way to help with your cardiovascular health. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and take these supplements and get healthy. Do a little bit of cardio training, do a little bit of resistance training, get healthy, increase your bone density, and improve your cardiovascular health. You can do this. In 2025, you can get healthy. Also, two great supplements that stack well together are NAD+. NAD+ helps boost up the energy levels. It helps to repair DNA damage, either cellular DNA or mitochondrial DNA. And NAD plus also helps to protect neurons. So please add this to your stack. It's really important to protect your neurons and repair your DNA damage. And ubiquinol, very important to take to protect your neurons, boost up your energy levels. It's an antioxidant, so it's going to soak up free radicals. Ubiquinol is the most bioavailable form of CoQ10. Most people that take CoQ10 supplements aren't taking ubiquinol. They're usually taking a lower quality. But ubiquinol is the highest bioavailable CoQ10 that you can get. It stacks really well with NAD+, also with C60 and resveratrol. You should be taking this, protect those neurons, improve your mitochondrial health, and repair your DNA. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the ubiquinol NAD.
Isn't nearly as drastic as the drop in spending on cars. And of course, when you have a weather month like that, you know, the fires perhaps in LA, when it was so cold in so many parts of the country, people just don't want to go out. They don't want to be spending money. It's okay, like we want to just be in our houses, whatever, maybe to the extent that spending can rebound in February, who knows, next month this could be a very different discussion.
I lived in my pajamas like on the weekend because it was so cold.
I get that.
Were you saving money?
Not buying cars.
Ordering some stuff in perhaps, but hey, listen, what's funny is I thought we were going to be talking first and foremost about the inflation number today.
I thought so too.
Fed's preferred inflation gauge smack on in terms of what economists were predicting.
Yes, so I think, and you know, the thing about, again, the fact that PCE comes so late in the month, we've already gotten the CPI report and the PPI
So we know
report.
the inputs.
It's really hard to miss the estimate on this one, you know, like there's already, it's so much of it has been telegraphed.
We're dropping the mic, economists.
I mean,
Come on.
especially when this one
The numbers
comes
are
in like,
there.
it's like, you know, we also get like quarterly data on this too. So when we get like the one in March and we've already seen what the first quarter estimate's going to be like, would be really hard to miss the estimate on this. So like, so yes, hard to, you know, miss that one. And in general, yes, inflation, maybe it's cooling, but it's still just so slow.
Well, it's
Yeah,
not 2%.
it's not 2%.
And that's what the Fed wants to see.
Correct. 2.6 is not 2, and they're not going to be happy until it's 2%.
Sticky. Yeah, 2%.
That's the
folks.
word.
Unless they change it. Haven't done it. Right?
That's not happening.
That's not happening. No. All right. Molly Smith, thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Molly Smith, economics editor at Bloomberg News. I will go to for us on all things the U.S. economy. All right, when we come back, the C-suite watching all that is going on both Washington and Wall Street. It's a full plate, everybody. So what might it all mean for the hottest name, Tim, in the restaurant space?
We're going to ask the CFO of Kava, who's going to be here in just a few minutes. Meantime, we're seeing stocks in the red, but the Dow is higher, really searching for direction in most of the equity market today. The S&P 500 barely down. We can go ahead and call that flat. The NASDAQ down 0.2%. The Dow, Carol, up by just 0.1%.
You're listening and watching Bloomberg Business Week, and this is Bloomberg.
Now to another story as we are getting this press conference into our newsroom live right now on this window washer that's dangling on the 78th floor.
When units pulled up, there was the scaffolding wasn't attached, it was swinging around, it smacked into the building. There was glass all over the street. We are acted quickly and secured the street for pedestrians.
I already played that. Let's see here. What's going on with Sky News?
Thing is that we want
We're playing Sky News right now.
guarantees, and that's very important for us because we have signed the Budapest memorandum, then we have Minsk agreements, Then we had some other arrangements with Russia. It never worked. So if we want this country to live and to be a prosperous one, we need some real guarantee, security guarantees. So that was his point. And I totally support this. I understand that Russia, they understand only the power of force. So that's why we must get those security guarantees. There is no other way to stop this war. Otherwise, they will invade in a year time when they regroup, when they recruit more people, and they will just go and grab, they will learn their lessons, they will go and grab entire Ukraine. Is this something that we want to achieve? I doubt so.
But you must be very concerned when you hear the President of the United States saying that he is not aligned with Russia or Ukraine, but he is somewhere in the middle. You must worry about those security guarantees, that they can never come from America when a president has that view.
We see some signs that America is not ready to provide these security guarantees. But as far as I know, this was one of the subjects that should have been discussed today after the signing of this rare metals agreement. So that was still something that should have been discussed between the president. On the other hand, yeah, maybe you're right that potentially America is not ready to provide these security guarantees. However, that does not mean that we should not be seeking for them, because I understand that the only real security guarantees can be those where America is a party to. So although Europe is supporting us, they are ready to send some troops to Ukraine, but we understand that if we want real and just and lasting peace in Ukraine, we should get some support from the United States. Maybe you have seen in the news lately that Europeans, they don't have necessary infrastructure to protect the sky over Ukraine. They don't have necessary troops now. So if we want this war to stop, if we want just peace in Ukraine, and make sure this is a country where people can live and give birth to their kids, we should somehow engage United States not only into some negotiations that they're doing now with Russia behind our backs, but also in some sort of guarantees for the security of this country for the future.
I mean, President Putin must be rubbing his hands watching that conversation. He must be delighted. We've had the first reaction from the Kremlin. Russian official Kirill Dmitriev, the Kremlin special envoy on international economic and investment cooperation, has called the Zelensky-Trump meeting historic.
Look, it's obviously a historic one. I mean, we are talking about a new world. We are talking that the old and understandable world order that used to exist before this new administration came to power is being buried deep in the ground. So now there is some new world order. We are not used to it, that's for sure. So that's why last month of the statements that are coming from Washington, they are sometimes striking, and no one was ready for that. This meeting is also something that will be discussed, obviously, in the next 2 days in the media. But this is a new world we had to get used to. And moreover, we have to find out how to live in this new world order. And this is a message for all our allies, for Europe in the first hand. We should be united, and we should understand how we are going to protect Europe, because relying on NATO protection on the assumption that America will step up and will protect entire Europe with its mighty forces is no longer valid. So this is a wake-up call. We have been listening to these wake-up calls for the last 3 weeks. So now we have to wake up. It's time to wake up, learn lessons, and have a plan what we're going to do next.
Okay, we really appreciate your time and giving us your reaction to events in the White House today. Andrei, Ukrainian MP, thank you very much. Well, let's bring in our international affairs editor, Dominic Blackhorn, get his thoughts. Interesting hearing from Andrei there, Dominic, wasn't it? Describing the situation now as a new world order, a wake-up call. But however you phrase it, this has been a disaster to Ukraine. The door has been left open. A White House official saying Zelensky can come back when he is ready to talk peace once again. I mean, can it be rescued, the situation, in the next day or two? Well, I think, people in Ukraine and people across Europe will be watching closely and looking on with absolute horror, Jonathan, at what happened in the Oval Office. And I think for European leaders, they're having to decide really whether this was just a conversation, an argument that got out of hand in the heated moment, provoked possibly by a tricky question from another journalist about the clothes that Zelensky was wearing, or was it something more sinister? Was it a deliberate, orchestrated pylon? I mean, I wasn't in the room, but from where I'm looking, and I think from where many observers are looking, it looked very much deliberate. It looked like it was being led by the Vice President J.D. Vance. The Oval Office was turned into a kind of reality TV show. It's something that sort of looked more at home, really, at a sort of Jerry Springer show or a version of the Jeremy Kyle show. It looked like a deliberate attempt to bully the leader of a country that's been attacked and been a victim of a unprovoked act of aggression by the Russians for 3 years. Now, if that is the conclusion of European leaders, they have a stark choice, because it undermines the kind of script they've been trying to follow, Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron this week, which is really to sort of hope for the best, to look on the woo Donald Trump, to win him over on Ukraine, and hope to be the last person in the room to persuade him and to bring him back from what has seemed to be a fairly critical and antagonistic position against Zelensky. And if they feel that this does seem to have been an orchestrated, deliberate attack, they may feel now that America's effectively gone rogue, and that it's down to them now that they can't rely on this rather capricious, unpredictable, what looks like a rather malicious partner this evening, and they're going to have to do what they can to defend Ukraine. And so, the scales may be falling from the eyes of the leaders of Europe, certainly in the ways that many critics have seen them. They've been far too deluded for too long, and may decide they need to do more to protect Ukraine. And then, of course, the question is, do they have the political will to do so? Do they have the military ability to do so? Europe has 10 times the GDP power of Russia. It should be able to step up to the plate, but it hasn't left it too late. If it does believe that America, in the light of this, but also other things that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance have said over the last week or so, is not a reliable partner, they're not being relied upon to defend Ukraine, and is effectively taking sides with Russia, is Europe up to it in terms of taking their place and defending Ukraine completely on their own? Dominic, we've just had the first reaction from Volodymyr Zelensky since that bust up in the Oval Office. He has put a message out on X. I think we can bring that to you now. He says, quite simply, thank you, America. Thank you for your support. Thank you for this visit. Thank you, President of the United States, Congress, and the American people. Ukraine needs just and lasting peace, and we are working exactly for that. So 1, 2, 3, 4 thank yous there in that sentence. He was accused of not being grateful. Well, he's underlining, Dominic, isn't he, his gratitude?
Yes, I mean, he's sounding contrite. He's trying to, I guess, salvage what he can from that meeting, but it went disastrously wrong for him. He seemed to take the bait, if that's what J.D. Vance and Donald Trump were laying for him. And he's now, I think...
Break free with the new Opera GX, a browser that puts you in control with a brand new design that frees up even more pixels for personalization and an inventory of features to up your game at every level. Like GX Control to help rein in your resources with integrated limiters for RAM, CPU, and network. A sidebar for direct access to your favorite side quests, streams, and posts. And built-in privacy tools like ad and tracker blockers and free no-log VPN. Check into GX Corner for the latest news, deals, and free games. But what really makes art hit different is mods, giving you the power to change everything from animated wallpapers to themes, sounds, music, and shaders, so you can change everything. Get Opera GX.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. You can get it in MCT coconut oil, avocado oil, or extra virgin olive oil in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. C60 is a very potent antioxidant. It's going to soak up free radicals. It's going to help with the mitochondrial health. What's going to happen is your ATP is going to go up, so you're going to have more energy. The cells are going to perform better. It's going to have less stress. It's going to have more energy. So the cells and the tissues and your organ systems are going to perform better. Your immune system will perform better. Your endocrine system will perform better. Your neurons will perform better. Take a teaspoon a day on an empty stomach is the best absorption. If you work out, take it before your workout, and it's going to soak up the free radicals that you produce during the workout, and you're going to recover quicker. You'll notice that your recovery time is improved. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take a teaspoon a day, every day. And do this little experiment. If you haven't used C60, you know people that aren't using it. Take a look at yourself the first day that you start and do it for a year. And you're going to notice that you have more energy. You're going to look healthier. And not only that, you are going to be slowing down your aging process. And you're going to have, because you have more energy and you're soaking up those free radicals, your endocrine system and your immune system is performing better and your organ systems are performing better. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the C60. It's a very potent antioxidant. It's the best that you can get as an antioxidant. So just soak up those free radicals. And the more ways you soak up free radicals, the better. Like the NAC stacks really well with C60 because NAC soaks up free radicals through the glutathione pathway. And, you know, so that's a great way to do it. And then Gladiator barley or heirloom barley soaks up free radicals using superoxide dismutase. So the different ways that you soak up free radicals, the better. But this is extremely potent. Take a teaspoon a day, and boom, you're gonna be soaking up those free radicals. Your energies are gonna go up, and your tissues, your organ systems, your immune system, your endocrine system, your neurons, your mental acuity, it's all gonna go up. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and take a teaspoon a day.
Quarters with special items, like for example, the steak that you pointed out in your earnings. How much does that drive revenue, and how often should we expect novelties like that to be added to the menu?
Yeah, so it's important to us on an annual basis to have one tentpole moment. So a key item that's introduced like steak in 2024, surrounded by a couple of seasonal moments where we can feature other items. For example, our garlic ranch pita chips last quarter. And so that creates the innovation and excitement around the menu that keeps our guests coming back into the restaurant and drives those great traffic results that I mentioned earlier. So certainly evaluating those opportunities and presenting them to create a compelling reason to continue to come to Cabo more and more often.
Trisha, forgive me, but more out of DC because we're just following everything that's happening there.
Welcome to our world. It feels
really
it feels like we move forward on like economic and market fundamentals and then get pulled into everything out of
I was
DC.
struck yesterday because I saw a tweet, or perhaps it was earlier than yesterday, from the Secretary of HHS, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who mentioned, I believe it was a restaurant, Steak and Shake, for removing seed oils from their menu and going with beef tallow instead. We did see your competitor Sweetgreen announce recently that they're getting rid of seed oils and they're going with more olive oil. Are you making any changes to your menu based on this sort of trend of moving away from seed oils, going exclusively with olive oil? Do you watch what's happening from the Secretary of HHS?
We certainly watch what's happening, and what we believe is important is the quality of the seed oils that we do have. Our seed oils are cold pressed and do not have the chemical processing that others may have in their seed oils. So we're providing fresh, clean ingredients for our guests, and that's something that we feel very strongly about, and we continue to deliver that Cabo cuisine in a very impactful way.
Trisha, the other thing I would say is that, coming off of earnings season, one of the things we've focused on is certainly what folks had to say about news out of Washington, but what their CapEx plans were, what their expansion plans were, which gives us a great indication of, the optimism within the corporate sector. Tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing in terms of expansion and where what you are planning to spend money on.
Yes, so we've been really fortunate. In 2024, we opened 59 restaurants, 58 net new restaurants. And in 2025, we expect to open between 62 and 66 restaurants, which is at least a 17% growth. So that's certainly an opportunity for us to lean into CapEx spend consistently and continue to deliver positive free cash flow as we move forward. There will be other enhancements as well that we'll be investing in, so additional technologies in the restaurants to improve speed and service in the restaurant and ultimately deliver a better guest experience.
What's your favorite thing to eat at the restaurant?
Oh my gosh, it actually changed quite frequently. There's so many amazing things to eat. So with 17 billion combinations, it's really, truly exciting. But right now I'm enjoying our lamb meatballs and our crazy feta as well as tzatziki on my bowl.
Oh my God, I'm starving. All right, gonna leave it there. Trisha, thank you so much for all the time, and thank you for really going around our world as well as your world. Really appreciate it. Trisha Tolliver, she's Chief Financial Officer at Kava, joining us from Washington, D.C. And of course, our thanks, as always, to our Nina Trentman, Senior Editor at Bloomberg News. Be sure to catch the Bloomberg CFO Briefing newsletter. It does come out of Sunday, and it features Trisha in it, as well as the conversation she had with Nina. So look forward to that.
Well, let's get back to developments out of D.C. now. Plans to sign a critical minerals deal between the U.S. and Ukraine were scrapped after Donald Trump's meeting Friday with Volodymyr Zelensky. It quickly devolved into a fire exchange over the Ukrainian leader's doubts that the U.S. president's efforts to broker a deal with Russia would yield lasting peace. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. First, though, we got to get an update on what's happening with these markets. Here he is, Charlie.
Thank you very much indeed. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, all advancing. It has been a volatile day, a day of fast-moving developments out of Washington. Let's bring you up to date right now. In the meantime, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky is now thanking the United States and President Trump for support. In a post on X, Zelensky said Ukraine needs a just and lasting peace. Now, all of this after a shocking White House exchange between the president and Vladimir Zelensky, an exchange in which President Trump berated Vladimir Zelensky for being, quote, disrespectful. The key takeaway from that meeting, plans to sign a critical minerals deal between the U.S. and Ukraine were scrapped after the meeting devolved into a fiery exchange over the Ukrainian leader's doubts that the president's efforts to broker a deal with Russia would yield a lasting peace. So here's where we stand right now. We have been swinging between gains and losses, but the S&P up 18 right now, up 0.3%. The Dow up 147, also up 0.3%. On NASDAQ up 37, a gain of 0.2%. The Russell 2000 index of small cap shares higher right now by 0.1%. We've got the 10-year yielding 4.22%, the 2-year dipping below 4%, 3.99% right now. Spot gold down 1%, 28.47 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 1%, 69.66 a barrel on this Friday, final trading day of the month. Bitcoin right now up 0.3%.
Vatican, Pope had isolated breathing crisis. Just now.
And in good spirits, but they say that the next 24 to 48 hours will be significant. Now, remember, it's 2 weeks since Pope Francis went into hospital, 2 weeks to the day, since he went in for treatment for severe bronchitis. His condition then deteriorated into a respiratory tract infection. And then a week last Tuesday, the announcement from the Vatican that the Pope had pneumonia in both lungs. Now, we still understand that he has that original condition, pneumonia in both lungs. He now has this additional problem of having inhaled vomit. So clearly a great deal of concern for Pope Francis this evening.
Lisa Holland at the Vatican for us. Stay with us here on Sky News. After the break, that news briefing between President Trump and Ukraine's President Zelensky breaks down into an extraordinary shouting match.
All right, it looks like there's something going on at the White House outside.
We've been here from this live picture that we have outside of the White House, the camera moving around. We're seeing a couple of lawmakers stepping into view in just a moment. I remind you that we're getting to a photographer down there on the ground. It looks like there's.
Come on, why isn't it?
I wanted to stay on this, as I mentioned, for a little bit, because we don't want to miss any of these comments, especially given the fact and heard from President Trump and Ukrainian President Senator Lindsey Graham as well.
So, what I think, disaster. I've been to Ukraine 8 or 9 times since the war. Understand the consequences of Putin's actions against Ukraine.
Oh, come on. Why can't there feed me
like tigers? That this minerals deal, which would be transformative in the relationship, would. Shit. I talked to Zelensky this morning. Don't take the bait. President Trump food last night. Somebody asked me, "Am I embarrassed about Trump?" For the president. I was very proud.
I'm switching to Bloomberg's feed because Live Now right now has problems.
And I don't know if we can ever do business with Zelensky again. I think most Americans saw a guy that they would not want to go in business with. The way he handled the meeting, the way he confronted the president was just over the top. So I think the relationship between Ukraine and America is important, vitally important. But can Zelensky do a deal with the United States? After what I saw, I don't know. He was shocked. He was very upbeat. I told Zelensky, we'll talk about security guarantees. We'll talk about ceasefires and how the war ends. This is a process. You have a new relationship with America, a $500 billion, $500 billion deal that President Trump is proud of, that gives us an interest worth defending. Let's talk about the positive. But he was terrible at Munich, Zelensky, and I think he has made it almost impossible to sell to the American people that he's a good investment. That he is a good investment.
Senator Graham, thank you. Do you think President Zelensky needs to resign to resume these peace talks?
He either needs to resign and send somebody over that we can do business with, or he needs to change.
Do you
All right, everybody, you have been
That
listening.
right there was America saying that Ukraine, you better have a new president. That they just did a soft coup in Ukraine on the front of the White House lawn.
Zelensky now do a deal with the United States? I do not know. He did talk about having a conversation with Zelensky and talking about security guarantees and other issues. But at this point, as we know, we've seen the negotiations, at least, or the conversations between the U.S. and Ukraine, they have broken off.
I do want to go back to Joe Matthew of Balance of Power. He joins us in our Washington, D.C. bureau. Lindsey Graham, a big defender of supporting funding for Ukraine within the Republican Party, Joe. What does it mean for him to make statements such as these?
Yeah, it's significant that we just heard from Lindsey Graham. That could have been any number of so-called MAGA Republicans who have long had trouble with the idea of sending more money and weapons to Ukraine. This was what you call the Ukraine hawk. After Mitch McConnell and maybe John Thune in the United States Senate, someone who actually agreed with Joe Biden when it came to arming the Ukrainians. Not always on the way that it was carried out. In fact, was the one to push for F-16s, for instance, for M1 Abrams tanks when others were doubting their effectiveness, for longer range missiles, bringing the fight to Russia. He's a Ukraine hawk, he's a Russia hawk, and to see him in the driveway just hours after President Zelensky rolled out without taking a single question from reporters, apparently instructed to leave the White House complex, it tells us a lot about where we are now. You're hearing questions about him potentially resigning. I don't know if that's where we're going here, but it is not looking like we're going to have a rekindling of the flame on this trip. We're still waiting to find out, as we discussed earlier, guys, if he's about to leave Washington.
I mean, how do you figure out when, things that there will be no more conversations at this point? I mean, how do we figure that out? How can we, I don't know, what are the channels of diplomacy that are now being pursued, possibly behind closed doors and maybe not playing out in front of reporters?
It's probably more back channels at this point after, the entire delegation was shown the door. They opened the gate and sent them packing today. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, though, did have the national security team in the room, including Mike Walls, another, by the way, Ukraine hawk. And so they're probably having conversations right now. It's not a mistake that Lindsey Graham ends up at the White House on an afternoon like this. And I suspect that we'll get a statement later on. The joint news conference that Trump and Zelensky were going to be holding has, of course, been canceled. So we're, frankly, got our eyes on Truth Social right now, and whether we get a statement further from the White House, more than what we've heard, at least. I will remind everybody that the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, is going to be with us here in the Bureau not too long from now for a conversation with David Weston. Remember, it was Bessent who brought that minerals deal to Kyiv just a couple of weeks ago and left empty-handed. He may be the closest we get to the sun today and finding out what the heck is going on.
Well, I also thought it was interesting. Where is Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State, in all of this?
Well, look, again, you've got a Ukraine hawk there, but he's also Donald Trump's Secretary of State. That's why you saw him, carrying the line at the UN earlier this week that upset a lot of Ukraine hawks to not blame Russia and its motivations here for having started the war. You heard Donald Trump earlier today in the Oval say that he's with both sides here, both Russia and Ukraine. So look, things have changed a lot since Joe Biden left the White House. But even when you look at the Ukraine hawks, like Rubio, they're still part of the Trump administration, and they're very much delivering his message.
Joe, it's about close to 11 p.m. in Moscow right now. Vladimir Putin, how's he watching events such as this unfold?
It was our Republican strategist, our contributor, Rick Davis, who said earlier that they are high-fiving at the Kremlin today. This was a loss, I think you can argue, for both Ukraine and the United States when it comes to the publicity around this, the public nature of this, and the chaos that it kind of represents here. This was not a good day for decorum in the Oval Office to hear voices raised, and it certainly raises a lot of doubts right now about the way forward. This minerals deal today was supposed to then lead to talks. Donald Trump said he just spoke to Vladimir Putin another time about this. They've had lengthy conversations about it. It's just unclear how we get to the peace table when the Ukrainian delegation is driving out of the White House complex with its tail between its legs.
I guess, it's, I just think about the optics of the whole week, Joe, in terms of the meeting with President Emmanuel Macron of France, and then, of course, the UK Prime Minister. And I think it was just the assumption that this was all going to kind of wrap up or take a big step forward on Friday. And yet here we are.
This was supposed to be the bow on top, right? It was all done. All the work was done.
Right.
And we knew that as soon as this conversation started, Carol, we started hearing Zelensky say, wait, I need more than this. This document is not enough.
Yeah.
Like, this meeting may not be going the way they planned. These are typically very carefully choreographed. And to see it melt down like that was quite remarkable. And it says a lot about the frustration and the tension between these two leaders.
All right, Joe, we so appreciate it. A busy day for you guys. It's all been unfolding right in front of us. Joe Matthew, of course, one of the co-hosts of Balance of Power. And of course, he'll be coming your way once again at 5 p.m. Wall Street time with a wrap up and tie up of where we are in terms of DC and the relationship between the US and Ukraine.
In the meantime, taking a look at the markets, we're actually seeing close to session highs on the S&P 500, up 0.5 percentage point. The NASDAQ composite up 0.5 percentage point as well, while Dow Jones Industrial Average up 0.4%.
Yep, we have seen a little bit of a move up or bouncing around too with the VIX. It was at more than 1 point at 1 point above 21, but settling down. But a lot of movement, I would say, in terms of kind of responding to what we are getting out of DC. We continue.
Let's go to Sky News. We're still waiting for the talk.
His anger has bubbled over and what we've seen just now. But in terms of what's been going on since Western allies have known about Donald Trump's desire for peace, they've been working really hard to try to keep the White House on side to support Ukraine into the long term. That minerals deal was critical for that. It was all about trying to lock in American investment, American boots in the form of miners on the ground to help secure this country. If that's not signed, then everything else is put into jeopardy, including the British and French plans for a peacekeeping force on the ground to try to secure long-term peace.
Deborah Haynes speaking to me a little earlier with the reaction from Ukraine. And reaction, of course, is starting to ripple around the world to that extraordinary argument between President Trump and President Zelensky, including, of course, from the UK government, who felt they had made real progress towards Ukraine's security during the meeting between Donald Trump and Sir Keir Starmer only yesterday. Let's speak to our political correspondent, Nick Martin. And I mean, what a contrast, Nick, between yesterday's meeting and today's.
Yeah, and we can only imagine the scenes, Jonathan, in Downing Street tonight as that disastrous meeting descended in such a way that it did between President Zelensky and Donald Trump. 24 hours ago, it was all rosy in the garden. Keir Starmer and President Trump, they had a really successful meeting. They were flattering each other. It couldn't really have gone any better. And there were such high hopes that President Zelensky's meeting with Donald Trump would go the same way. Of course, we now know that that hasn't happened. Government sources tonight have described the way that it has gone as unhelpful. One government source said Zelensky is no diplomat, but they have conceded that the government's position, the UK government's position, remains unchanged. And I think there's now a sort of hope that the dust might be able to settle and something might be able to be salvaged from this. Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition, has been on social media. She said, respectable diplomacy is essential for peace. She says we need to remember that the villain is the war criminal, President Putin. Ed Davey, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, said this is thuggery from Trump and Vance, the vice president. We've heard from the French president, Emmanuel Macron, who was speaking to reporters in Portugal a while ago. He said Russia is the aggressor and Ukraine is the aggressed people. I think we were all right to help Ukraine and sanction Russia 3 years ago and continue to do so. As I say, there were such high hopes about this meeting, not least because President Zelensky, his next stop will be here in London on Sunday, where he will meet Keir Starmer, and then leaders from around Europe will be meeting to have a summit to just try and show this sign of unity and commit to supporting Ukraine. That would have been an awful lot easier if this meeting with these two men had gone better. Unfortunately, the foundations have now been shaken for this summit at the weekend. Everyone would have wanted to have welcomed President Zelensky back to London, patting him on the back, saying how great that meeting had gone, on top of the way that it had gone with Macron and on top of the successful meeting with Keir Starmer. There could have been real momentum behind it. Now it would feel like there has been a few steps backwards, and it'll be interesting to hear in the next few days how these talks between European leaders goes on Sunday. But it could not have been worse. And I just wonder how the Prime Minister would have been feeling, Sir Keir Starmer was feeling, when he saw just how disastrously that meeting went. It was the worst of all scenarios. And President Zelensky will be here on Sunday, and it'll be interesting to see what happens next.
It will be fascinating. Thank you very much for the moment of view there from Westminster and the government here in the United Kingdom. Well, let's just reflect then, as we approach the end of the hour, on what has been an extraordinary showdown this afternoon in the White House. President Volodymyr Zelensky has left the White House without signing a critical minerals deal with the US that Donald Trump had suggested was a condition for future support for Ukraine. His departure came after Mr. Trump cut short talks over the deal and shouted at Ukraine's leader during this extraordinary meeting in the Oval Office, berating him for gambling with millions of lives and suggesting his actions could trigger World War III. The last 10 minutes of nearly 45-minute discussions devolved into a tense back and forth between Mr. Trump.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Boomer Boost. This is a supplement that has 68 nutrients. It's the nutrient profile is pretty extensive here. Go to my store to take a look at the label more closely. But literally, within 72 hours after taking this, you are going to feel more energetic. You're going to sleep better. Your mental acuity is going to be better. And then as you're taking it every day, you're just healing. You can feel your body is healing, and you just have more energy. All right. And it's not like it starts to go down throughout the day. It's a steady energy throughout the whole day. All right. Usually when it comes to energy, you peak and then it comes down. This is a steady burn of energy throughout the whole day. How it works is it boosts up your metabolism, and you're increasing your energy levels. So you have lots more to ATP. That's really important. And it focuses on some key systems: your musculature system, your cardiovascular, so your vascular system and your heart, and your brain. So and because it's focusing on your brain, you're going to be able to sleep better, you're going to be calmer, you're going to be able to focus better. This is great stuff, right? You'll lose weight. You take a big scoop once a day, mix it with soft foods, a smoothie, or mix it with water. Some people mix it with milk, so you can mix it with filtered water. I mix it in soft foods like hummus, but you can mix it with yogurt or something, or applesauce. Take a big scooper a day, either for your breakfast or for your lunch, every day. All right. And what you're going to notice is that you're losing weight and you're controlling your glucose levels, and you just have you just have more vitality and you have more energy. And that will lead you to doing other things that are important to this holistic protocol, like exercise. That's resistance training, balancing exercise, stretching, cardio, and also other things like meditation or spirituality, Getting good sleep is another key pillar. Proper diet, proper supplementation, and learn new things. Pick up a book and read something that you haven't read before. Learn new things. And when you do that, you're going to be developing neuroplasticity, a positive neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity just means that there's a changing in the network of neurons and how they're connected. Positive neuroplasticity is more connections. Negative neuroplasticity is a recession of those neural connections. So please go to my store, get the Boomer Boost, use discount 5, and you get $5 off. But Boomer Boost is even better. It's even better when you use it with the barley, either Gladiator barley or heirloom barley. You can take the barley separately, but it works better when you do the combo. Now, what the barley is a high density protein, and this barley is an heirloom barley, so there's a lot of nutrients in it. All right, you take a half a scooper or a full scooper a day and mix it with the Boomer Boost, or you can just take it separately, just half a scoop or a full scoop. If you get the heirloom barley, it's going to be more. It's going to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals with superoxide dismutase. When you do these together, you're really helping with controlling your blood glucose levels, and you are detoxifying your body, all right, bringing down inflammation. That's great for your immune system, right? But you can take it with the Gladiator barley, and Gladiator barley gets all the benefits that you have with the heirloom barley, except that it also focuses on strength. So if you are an athlete, this is what you should be taking for your pre or post workout, all right? And so you're going to have the nutrients you need, you get the protein, and you're building the strength for your sport. Now, if you're not an athlete, younger or older, but if you're just not an athlete, you can still benefit from this. Because what this will do by doing this once a day is going to really radically control A1C levels, your blood glucose levels. So it's going to control your A1C levels. And when you do some resistance training, you're going to build muscle. So this is great as an anti-aging pair. I have a longevity box called the Longevity Boost box, and you get the Boomer Boost in your choice of Gladiator barley or heirloom barley. All right. It's cheaper to get the Longevity Boost box because I've discounted the box in such a way where it's cheaper than buying individual items. And you can use discount 5 on top of that built-in discount. So that means you save more money by buying a longevity box or an anti-aging box, especially when you use the discount 5. But you can buy the items separately. That's up to you. You can take the barley separately. You'll get benefits from that, but you get max benefits when you stack this together. And you can just take the Boomer Boost by itself. You get a lot of benefits just taking this, but stacking it with barley, you're detoxifying your body, you're bringing down that inflammation, you're soaking up those free radicals, that superoxide dismutase. And if you take the Gladiator barley, you are building strength too on top of it. Another great stack is the Boomer Boost, the Gladiator barley, and the Myotrol that I have. Because remember what Myotrol does. Myotrol helps with the gene expression for building muscle and maintaining muscle. Gladiator barley is the material that your muscles need, the protein it needs to make that new muscle and to maintain that muscle. And to supercharge your energy levels and metabolism and overall health, Boomer Boost. So that's a great stack. Boomer Boost, Gladiator barley, and Myotrol. That's a very powerful stack, especially if you're an athlete. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can get healthy in 2025. You just got to follow what I'm saying. It's a holistic approach. It's taking the proper supplements, but also, changing your lifestyle, proper eating, proper, exercise, and proper sleep, and learning new things and all this stuff. And when you do that on a regular basis, you're really changing your life. You can literally radically improve your life if you do this protocol. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Boomer Boost and the Gladiator Barley or the Heirloom Barley, and use discount 5 on any order, and you get $5 off. I want you to get healthy in 2025. All right. There's too many people that have chronic problems. A lot of it's lifestyle, and they're on the wrong track. I'm telling you how to get on the right track of health. And when you do this on a regular basis, your body's healing and you're slowing down the aging process. And you're going to thank me in 5 years if you follow what I'm saying. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, let's go to Bloomberg here.
Today, I mean, you could not have asked for a better arc. And he walked in, and I'm not sure what he was thinking.
Many of us have been in heated negotiations, not at this level, but still heated negotiation, where people pound the table, they may walk out the door, things like that. And it's actually part of the negotiation. Is that what we saw today, or was this a more fundamental rupture?
David, you don't do a negotiation with the President of the United States in public like this. That we were scheduled to have lunch afterwards, and that perhaps he could have brought up some of the points. Instead, he chose to let things go into a downward spiral on worldwide television. And again, I keep coming back to the disrespect of the American people. It was one thing for President Zelensky and I had an extended heated negotiation in Kyiv, but we were going to get this economic agreement done. But when you bring it out to the public like this, we'll see if there's any coming back.
If there is further negotiations, do you expect to remain the point person on the economic deal?
I expect to be the point person on the economic deal, but ultimately it's going to be up to President Trump whether he thinks that he can continue negotiating with President Zelensky.
What is in it for Ukraine, the economic deal? Why is it in their best interest to sign this deal?
The economic deal is a fantastic deal because if you think the U.S. is willing to co-join its economic interests with Ukraine, and like I said, a very, very strong symbol, potential for very high returns for Ukrainian people. And again, it was meant to be a very strong symbol to Russian leadership that the U.S. and Ukrainian people are more co-joined. And we have economic interest on the ground. Economic security becomes military security. The economy of Ukraine coming out of this, I thought our deal would have really been an accelerant to Ukrainian growth. I mean, you look at Poland next door, and since the Iron Curtain came down, when it came down, Poland and Ukraine had roughly the same size economies. Now Poland, before the war started, Poland was 4 times larger. So Ukraine has a lot of potential. We hope to help unlock it. We'll see whether a deal can be done.
Would it be beneficial to Ukraine, though? I understand why it might benefit the United States. And you've heard some people like Larry Summers said to me, this is sort of like Versailles, except that the Germans were the aggressors in World War I. These are the victims. Why should they give up natural resources? What's wrong with that argument?
Well, look, I think Professor Summers should comment on things where he has all the facts. And Versailles was debt. This is equity. We get nothing if the Ukrainian people don't get anything. It's win-win. So there is no debt component here. Many of the European loans, or much of the European aid, has come in the form of debt. Thus far, U.S. has put in grants, and this is not debt. If it were debt, the Ukrainian bonds would not have been going up on the deal. So I think Mr. Summers, Professor Summers, should maybe call me and ask for the details before commenting. Maybe it's a nice media line that it's Versailles, but it's just not the truth.
You also have some other responsibilities besides trying to get an economic deal in Ukraine. Let's talk a little bit of the economy. And specifically, you and I have talked before, you have as a goal, as I recall, getting the deficit down to 3% of GDP in the United States. Saying it's going to take a little time to do it, not right away. What role does revenue from tariffs play in your spreadsheet when you look at getting that 3% number?
Good. That's a great question, because over the coming weeks, months, as we put the budget together, your viewers are going to see lots of different nomenclature. The CBO scoring, and the CBO scoring will likely not include any tariff income, and so much of the tariff income could be substantial. We will see where the tariffs finally end up. The China tariffs, since they were put on, have brought in substantial revenue. They continue to bring in substantial revenue. President Trump has talked about reciprocal tariffs. If tariffs are his favorite word, I would say reciprocal has gotten to be his second favorite word. And in the reciprocal tariffs, you actually don't know the path of what's going to happen, David, because the idea there is that if Europe has a 12.5% tax on our cars, we could either put a 12.5% tax on theirs, or the tariffs could get dropped altogether. So it's going to be very path dependent, but I would expect that with the 10-year scoring that the CBO likes to use, that there could be substantial tariff income over the next 10 years.
When we look at tariffs, there's a lot of different things being talked about, proposed, threatened, even imposed. One of them is Mexico, which comes up next week. Is it important to get the revenue from the Mexico tariffs? Because I know Mexico is sort of moving, it appears right now. For example, with respect to tariffs on things coming into Mexico from China. Can they get off the hook on tariffs?
So the tariff negotiation isn't under the purview of Treasury. It's USTR, U.S. Trade Representative, and Commerce. So I'm going to leave that question to them. I do think one very interesting proposal that the Mexican government has made is perhaps matching the U.S. On our China tariffs. I think it would be a nice gesture if the Canadians did it also. So in a way, we could have Fortress North America from the flood of Chinese imports that's coming out of the most unbalanced economy in the history of modern times.
Another one of the goals I think we've talked about is 3% growth. Again, I'm not saying you're going to go right away, but that's the goal ultimately, as I understand it. We have some people now starting to say the indications about a coming recession are going up, including Torsten Slok from Apollo, somebody you know, who came out with a note today saying the probabilities of a recession are going up. Is that what your numbers show you?
David, it's early. I do think that we're seeing kind of the hangover from this excess spending in the Biden 4 years, and what we are going to do now is something that I've talked about several times on your show in the past. We're going to re-privatize the economy, and as we bring down government spending and get the private sector moving again, that may not be a perfect one-to-one ratio, but I'm sure it's going to happen. President Trump said the other day, someone said, well, when does it become your economy? He said probably 6 or 12 months out. I think I would agree with that.
We also are seeing some numbers, some sentiment numbers. The consumer sentiment indicates that inflation expectations are rising. Now, that's not necessarily the hard numbers. We're not necessarily seeing consumer spending yet. Sooner or later, there's that come in sync. What do you think the American people get wrong as they anticipate more inflation?
Well, I think, look, I'm not going to question the American people's current conditions because we're still living through this Biden inflation. I think that over the next 6 and 12 months, that as we deregulate, drill more American energy, and establish our energy program, and then make the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act permanent, get some certainty, that I think that we could very quickly go back to the Federal Reserve target of 2.0%.
We've also talked about the 10-year, and you've indicated that the yield on the 10-year is an important
All right, I've been streaming for 3 hours now. I'm gonna close down But please help support my work by getting the products that I offer. Follow the protocol. It works. I have it at different price points. You can target different systems based on your needs. But if you follow everything I do, you're an anti-ager. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the products, help support the work by sharing the links. Make sure you subscribe to all my channels. All the links are in the description of this video and all my videos. And please help your health and supporting my work. It's a win-win situation. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.